Okay, good morning, everyone. We're,
Yeah.
we're gonna start. I guess we'll just go into business, but we're gonna start with Doc talking about Iran's missile attacks on Israel as well as the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And then the second half of Free School will spend on reporting on the event on Tagore that just happened in Bangalore, and all the work that Mamata and Raju are doing in India, which Prabha will report on. I think Raju has a report as well, and then we can also watch the video that was produced from the exhibit. So without further ado, I'll pass it.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Emily. We're living in eventful times, and Columbia University called in the New York City Police on Thursday to take down a student protest encampment against the genocide going on in Israel, in Gaza. 108 people were arrested, although they were held briefly. But the message that it sends is chilling. It is an attack upon free speech in the name of freedom, in the name of protecting Jewish students, which I wish to return to, and to the administration of Columbia University and Pomona College and the University of Southern California in LA, which denied the valedictorian the right to give her valedictory, though she had a 3.98 GPA. This is going on all around the country. But to them, I say, we'll see you in Chicago, August 18th through 22nd. And Chicago and the Democratic Party have to be shut down, no matter what happens afterwards, no matter how the ruling elite try to spin it. And I was just mentioning to Emily, we should consider the free school renting a bus to go out there. But one way or another, we're going to go out there, and we have to be there. While the genocide in Gaza was going on, the Israeli regime launched an act of war against the Iranian state. An attack upon an embassy, a consulate, is an attack upon the nation itself. Embassies are seen as state property of those nations. So the attack was an act of war under international law, and the murders of generals and other leaders of the Iranian state further added to the nature of the crime. After almost 2 weeks of attempting to get the UN Security Council to pass a resolution condemning this act of war, and I want to underline an act of war, because ultimately, as I try to go through this, the question of the legitimacy of the state of Israel is now on the table. I'll tell you why I say that. The US, Britain, and France vetoed every effort for a diplomatic response to Israel's act of war. Okay. On April 13th, last Saturday, the Iranians acted, and they acted decisively. They acted politically within the framework of world public opinion and international law. and the contrast what must be made between Israel, a rogue criminal regime, and Iran, the opposite of that. They launched over 300 drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles at the state of Israel. Most of them were shot down as they were intended to be. The Iranian government had informed the United States and other governments, including Jordan and Saudi Arabia, who seem to have participated with the West in protecting Israel, so to speak. The drones that were first fired took about 8 hours, so they were slow flying drones. And then came other missiles, and then the ballistic missiles, which did in fact get through and cause damage. However, what is significant, if you play chess, you know what check is. It was not yet checkmate, it was check. They checked the Israeli military, and they said to them that we now have you boxed in. And the Iranian government said that if Israel responds, the next time we will unleash 1,500 missiles at you, and not our outdated stuff, our real stuff. It's like, let me give an example. It's like if we in this room and somebody comes out and closes the door and locks us in.
Right.
And we'd be out there, you know, we're gonna get together and rush y'all and come out. But you can't get out. I got you locked in. You know, and that's what this drone missile attack did. It proved to Israel and to the world that now you locked in. Not only can I touch you, but I got you checked. You checked. You know what I'm saying? And if you think about launching an attack upon us, we're coming at you with triple the force of this first thing. That was just, in other words, what the Iranians said, that was just a demonstration. And you fell for the bait. You shot all your shit. I know where you're at now. I know how you rolling. The next time we come, I know where your Iron Dome is. I know where your Patriots are. I know where your jets take off from. Next time we hit you, we come in even harder. Now, this represents two things. One, the change in warfare. Drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles that do not require, first of all, being manned. These are unmanned. Drone warfare gives the weaker side, and I'm not saying that Iran is the weaker side at this point, it is not. But the weaker side, let us say, like Ansar Allah, the so-called Houthis. They ain't got that much, but some drones. And we dug deep in the mountains. And we're gonna shut all this noise down in the Red Sea. You see what I'm saying? And imposed by acts of drone warfare, sanctions upon a genocidal regime. And they've done it. I'll get back to that in a minute. The Israelis responded, quote unquote, a few days ago. It was a response that nobody even knew what happened in Isfahan, this historic city in Iran. The Iranians didn't know what happened. What, y'all?
You're right.
The Israelis now, oh, we launched an attack upon Isfahan and yada, yada. And the people said, well, we didn't see. It's like if I, came up, let's say, and punched Serafina in the face. Bang! And she said, "I'm gonna get back at you." And she squeezes me, it's like a serious military operation, and your response is, that shows us much of what we need to know. The military balance in Western Asia has changed qualitatively, where today the Israeli regime, which had carte blanche, because of the US backing up and so on, to attack Arab and Muslim states at will. And then, like every bully, to stand back and say, yeah, ha, 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 I'm gonna take your lunch money, I'm gonna smack you in the face, and you can't do nothing about it. Now, the person that was being bullied start going to the gym, start training, start building up. Suddenly, the person that was bullied is a 200-pound, muscle-bound, and is prepared. If you do it again, I'm taking you down. That's what happened. Drone warfare, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. Now, the Iranians did not use their best stuff. They used the stuff that they could do away with. Drones that are 20 years old. I know you're going to shoot them down, and I want you to shoot them down, because when you shoot them down, that show me what you got and where your stuff is. You did. So it was a hell of a move. And Israel and then the Biden administration was telling Israel, well, you won, you shot down 90%. And the Iranians said, you ain't shot nothing down. It costs us about $25 million for the whole operation. It cost y'all about $3 billion. You blew all your shit up, man. Now you got to go back to your sponsor, the United States, and rebuild the Iron Dome and the Patriots and all that. And America ain't got that much, because they done gave it all up to Ukraine. Right. So now you lost and turned out. Right. Put it another way, you butt naked. I know what you got. Now, here's the danger. The Israelis and the whole population is sick. They were brought up on an evil, sick narrative. And it is a white supremacist state and a white supremacist population. They all have to be re-educated. They think somehow, as they say in the street, their shit don't smell. That they're superior to all people. I want to bring that home in a certain moment. But they do have nuclear weapons. And they do have this doctrine known as the Samson Doctrine. Let's keep it 100. All the Jews in the world are about, at best, 20 million people. Maybe more. I don't know. A very small, minute part of the human population of 8 billion people who are saying their narrative is that their only protection against anti-Semitism, put quotes here, because first of all, European and American Jews are not Semites. They're not Semites. They're Ashkenazi. Yeah. In the United States, they're white people, white Americans that have organized themselves as a particular interest group, I put that, almost as a political party, upholding and defending the interests of a strategic part of the American elite. And by the way, a way to make money. They're not Semites. So to be anti-Israel is not to be anti-Semitic. It's only anti-Semitism if you assume that the Israeli population are Semites. The Hebrew that they speak is not a Semitic language. Most of the Ashkenazi Jews never heard of Hebrew, except Hebraic scholars. And the Hebrew that they speak is not the Hebrew of the Torah. It's not the ancient language. The ancient languages, that's what we mean when we say Semitic. Semitic means mix, mix. The languages of that part of the world are Afro-Asiatic languages. Arabic is an Afro-Asiatic language. It is Semitic as such. Ancient Hebrew was probably one of those languages in the same way that ancient Egyptian or Kemetic language was a foundational Afro-Asiatic language. And by Afro-Asiatic linguistic group, we're talking about the northeast part of Africa and the westernmost part of Western Asia. Okay, but we'll come back to that. The Israelis always threaten in a real military crisis to use nuclear weapons. You should know that back in the days, and part of the fight against apartheid back then was we had to fight against the Israeli-South African apartheid alliance, which included, and the UN brought this out, a secret nuclear deal relationship between apartheid South Africa and Israel. Any uncovering of the total character of this state would leave anyone in a sense of disgust at them. And it's all coming out right now. But they have nuclear weapons, although they denied, and the United States continue to deny. They have at least 200 of them. At least 200. And have threatened peaceful Arab nations with their use. This is what they call the Samson option. If the existence of the state of Israel is threatened, we will bring the whole fucking world down. They talk like this. We're talking about pathology on a level seldom seen. The genocide, and it is that they're carrying out in Gaza, is worse than, is worse than what the Nazis did in Europe. The Nazis attempted to keep what they were doing a secret from the world. These people want the world to see it. This is the moral, there is no moral shame, no moral decency here. To carry out a genocide in a way that the whole world sees it. And you don't apologize for it. You don't have any excuse for it. And then to threaten, to plunge humanity into a third world war where nuclear weapons would be used. The Samson option. At the end of the day, Israel, founded on the goodwill of humanity, when humanity opened up those death camps and saw what had happened, everybody from Stalin to Du Bois to perhaps even Einstein said that world humanity is obligated to find a place and a special responsibility upon humanity to protect this people, to prevent this from ever happening again. But they betrayed humanity and the goodwill of humanity. And hence, rather than a single state, a binational state of two peoples, what happened was a Zionist state that was committed to a form of Jewish nationalism, something close to Nazism. Israel has evolved over the last 70 years into a genocidist Nazi regime. It's not just right-wing Israelis, these are Nazis. Their closest examples of any regime in the world is to Nazism, to Hitler. And it must be said. And once one understands the essence and nature of this regime and its intentions, one then understands the obfuscation of the pointing of the finger at everybody else as an anti-Semite and committed to the elimination of all the Jews in the world. Does that make sense? Where the criminal points the finger at the innocent. The people who are attempting to find an answer to a crime against humanity and say, no, we are the victims. Well, when was the last time you saw a Palestinian drop a 2,000-pound bomb on an Israeli city or town? When were Israeli babies killed like this? Never has occurred. So the claim of anti-Semitism is a way of making the victims into the victimizer. To claim that the Israeli regime is a way of protecting Jews around the world is a fake claim. It has made the condition or the existence of Jews more perilous. The world now is confronting the fact that the Israeli Zionist state has relinquished its right to exist as a state in the world. States are not permanent. They come and go. The Nazi state was destroyed after World War II. Perhaps the German nation should have been. In this instance, the Israeli regime has ceased to have legitimacy and a legitimate right to exist. It cannot exist. It is a criminal state, a criminal regime, a criminal nation, and a people committed to committing crimes against humanity and go off as though, oh, we ain't did nothing but killed some insects. This is not just a state. This is not just one party. This is a whole nation, a whole people. Corrupted, criminal, pathological. Okay. The US people. First of all, it is to the everlasting credit of the American people that they're not going along with this. They can't see it all clearly because we're so heavily propagandized, etc. The situation is such that Biden's reelection is very uncertain at this point. As we have said here before, he must be defeated unequivocally. There is no conversation that can in any way say that, well, Trump would do the same thing. Well, we don't know that, but one thing we do know is what Biden has done. And that the House, over the objection of the peace forces in the Republican Party, which told this guy, Johnson, if you capitulate to the Democrats and pass this bill that will send $25 billion more to Israel, you're out as Speaker. Yet he is doing it, and the House will pass that bill today. $25 billion more to a genocidist regime? 2,000-pound bombs? Rebuild the Iron Dome? More missiles? We got to meet them in Chicago. We got to be there. You know, but then there is American Jewry. First of all, American Jews are not Semites. Let's keep it real. American Jews are white Americans. German Jews are not Semites. They're Germans. German Jewry was more assimilated than Jews in most of the world, most of the European or Western world. They are Ashkenazi. They spoke German. They saw themselves as German. Polish Jews spoke Polish, and when they didn't speak Polish, they spoke Yiddish. The great body of European Jewish literary work, and it is a rich body of work, is in Yiddish. That is the mother tongue or the second tongue of European Jewry, or at least Eastern Central European Jewry. You know, Yiddish. A great language, far superior to this mess they talk in Israel and call Hebrew. Nobody is interested in that. It has not produced literature. It has only produced a sense of extreme, aggressive, predatory nationalism. So for American Jewry to refer to themselves as Semites and to then say that any opposition to the Israeli regime is anti-Semitic is completely a distortion. Again, one has to assume that American Jews are Semites. They are not. Never were. Excuse me for talking too loud. Never. It's a lie. It's a fiction. It's a distortion of history for the sake of justifying imperialist, colonial occupation and oppression.
Mhm.
That's number one. To then claim that the most fundamental oppression in the world today is anti-Semitism, that the Jews are the most oppressed, the most beleaguered, the most victimized. Then he said, what about the transatlantic slave trade? Oh no, because we could see today that the African Americans, the descendants of the slave trade, are themselves anti-Semitic. Oh, they whooped us bad back in the days. Right after the civil rights movement, they went buck wild on Black people, calling us anti-Semitic because we sided with the Palestinians going back to the late 60s, early 70s. We was always down with them. We saw a common liberatory process. And then when the struggle against apartheid kicked off, we saw the connection between Jews and Israel and South Africa. Well, ain't nobody dumb. I mean, we can connect the dots. Oh, no, y'all don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you're anti-Semitic and you following Farrakhan. The man said, my name ain't no Farrakhan, I'm Farrakhan. But that's a kind of twist.
Yeah.
And trivialize Farrakhan. I'm gonna show you. Now, take our event on Martin Luther King and the speech Why Oppose War in Vietnam. In the name of uniting struggles, we had a speaker from Jewish Voices for Peace. And I'm down with Jewish Voices for Peace as the first major break in the Jewish community and its Zionist leadership or Zionist controllers. Okay? I'm down. Jews standing up for what's right. Ain't happened in a long time. Not since the Civil Rights Movement. You understand? With the 6-Day War, Jews in droves left the Civil Rights Movement as though Israel had been attacked by Egypt and Syria, when in fact it was Israel that attacked them. You understand what I'm saying? And so, now our existence is under attack and we must leave the Civil Rights Movement. Let's keep it 100. It was the Civil Rights Movement that began to unravel the remaining anti-Jewish prejudices in the country. Where Jews could not own hotels and other things, sports teams and so on in the South. There were no professional football or basketball teams in the South before the Civil Rights Movement. That's why you get all this Alabama and Mississippi and all this bullshit, you know what I'm saying? But then we always had historically Black colleges, which played better football, better basketball, and were more innovative. I'll tell you about that. But they, it was just that white thing, as they say. And they played white football and white basketball. Like they didn't jump that high and they didn't run that fast. But you go to Grambling, Florida A&M, better known as FAMU, them cats were spread out and moving. And I could go. I ain't gonna go into. You didn't have professional sports teams in the South. There was no Atlanta Braves or Dallas Cowboys before the Civil Rights Movement. And then Jewish money in the entertainment fields. You understand? It was Black people that freed them from the remaining prejudices against them. But let them tell it, they freed us. Yeah. 2 heroic Jewish civil rights activists were killed in Mississippi, along with a Black man. So are we going to have to repay that debt for the next 2,000 years? 2 Jews died. And their parents didn't see it that way, no way. But this idea that's central to world history is the oppression of Jews. And then the added fiction that European Jewry originates in the, quote, Holy Land. They don't. They converted. Just like many Europeans today are converting to Islam, like many Americans are converting to Islam. The same thing in the Holy Land. But the Jews in Europe were converts to Judaism. They are, and I want to say this again, they are not Semites. They never spoke a Semitic language. And hence, when they attacked the third holiest site in Islam, Al-Aqsa Mosque, under the claim that the Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on the Temple Mount.
Yeah.
Temple of Solomon.
Temple of Solomon, yes. And they have a right and have said they will destroy Al-Aqsa. First of all, let's get it real. Europeans who never had a history of living in that area are now going to claim the right to destroy a holy site of Islam. Come on. You can see where I'm going. The struggle for peace in this moment is irreversibly connected to the struggle against Zionism in the state of Israel. There is no struggle for world peace and for the security of humanity that is not a fight against Zionism, which has evolved into fascism and its ideology. This is very important in the political configuration of the United States. As I was saying, I was less than impressed, to put it mildly, with the speaker from Jewish Voices for Peace. First of all, it was highly disrespectful, not of us, but of Martin Luther King Jr. And the Black Freedom Movement. That's not unusual, though. See, my assumption, I'll put it this way, is that the Jewish community in the United States, parentheses, which doesn't mean every Jew individually, but the Jewish community as a community, held together by certain beliefs, certain narratives, etc., has a deep animus towards the African American people. And African Americans know it and don't like them. I remember, just my own experience, Alice wanted to introduce me to her roommate. I said, Alice, and I said, just like I'm talking, I said, I'm not into Jews that way. I don't go out of my way to meet them, talk to them, be around them. But I wasn't always like that. Again, I came up in the Communist Party. Some of my mentors, some of the people I was closest to were Jews. I always assumed that Jews were the best of white people, the most liberal, the most pro-Black, and at least the advanced guard of them. I assumed that. And I could name them: Victor Perlo, Hyman Luma, Herbert Aptheker, Phil Foner. I could just name them, who would never put Jewish suffering ahead of the Black struggle. Never. In fact, Herbert Aptheker, a Jew, was W.E.B. Du Bois's literary executor. In other words, when Du Bois left the United States, he literally left his body of work in the care of the Communist Party. You want to know why the ruling class has tried to erase him? You know, and therefore any attack upon Du Bois, whether the person knows it or not, is in support of the ruling class who attacked him on the grounds of anti-communism. That's why I say to the Saturday Fake School, hey y'all, you ain't advancing Du Bois. You're trivializing Du Bois with your bullshit. And the struggle to reclaim Du Bois from the ashes and ruin of the ruling class attack upon him. You get where I'm coming from. So I became unfamiliar with these Jewish people. Who the fuck are y'all? Very smug, arrogant, two-faced it. Yeah, we're liberals and shit. But war, attack upon Black people. So much so that Baldwin himself had to respond. And what he was in essence saying is, don't act like you know innocent nothing. Right. You are the ones who came into our community and sold us bad food and bad meat at the highest prices. You were part of the slum landlord thing. So what he said Black people are quote, anti-Semitic, really because they're anti-white. And you are white people who carry out policies that institutionalize racism. You can't get around it. Okay? All right, you say, well, but we give hundreds of thousands of dollars every year to the NAACP. Come on, money, don't play me like that. You control them because you pay them. And they ain't no longer a force for Black freedom. They're forced to apologize for Black oppression. That's what the NAACP is. Any leader of the NAACP, any Black person you see a leader, oh, he is the leader of the NAACP, listen to him talk. Whenever you hear a Black man or woman, you know, when they smile too much, when they can't complete a sentence, you know, like, and our people ain't doing, well, what'd you just say? You know, that's why I'm always saying, could you speak up? Be clear. But when you see, because, you know, Black people speak like I speak, more clear. You understand? I mean, I don't know what, and of course, Black leadership is known for oratory, right? They speak, and when you see a quote Black leader, and then when it comes to Israel, you know, wait a minute, dog, what you say? Right. Sherelle Parker, come on, baby, what you doing? Why you with that man that sold them bombs to Israel? Like Baldwin said, every child is mine. Yeah. Every bomb dropped in Vietnam is dropping on me. So how we get to you, Sherelle Parker? A fraud, a bum, a piece of garbage. You don't represent Black folk. But, so now they come, Jewish philanthropy. But it's not really philanthropy, it's buying up everybody. Most Black leaders have been bought and paid for. Black Congressional Caucus, that's an arm of the Jewish establishment. They don't represent Black people. Oh, you stand up like any Black elected official stands up for the Palestinian. Oh, here come the Jews. We're going to buy an opposition to you. You can't deny it. What I am saying, and this is why I got kicked out of the Church of the Overcomer. Like they say, one door closed, many more open up. I'm so glad I'm out of that corruption. What did Pastor Carolyn push me off the stage when I began to say? When I said Black people must have a different relationship with the Jewish community. Suddenly protocol kicks in. Oh, you talking too long now. But that's a tactic. And girlfriend is out and out supporting Biden. It's so good that the free school is out of that mess. That we're out of that mess. Because they thought they were going to use us. They took our kindness for weakness. You understand what I'm saying? They thought they were, that's that hustling game. I know hustlers. Grew up with, and I'm not anti-hustlers. You know, some people have to do that to survive. But they were hustling us. Get off the stage. We can't be seen as being against the Jewish community. Now, people say, well, if you define the whole Jewish community in this way, you are anti-Semitic, you know, or anti-Jewish. Because we Jews are like everybody else. We're individuals. But then I say, no, you're not. Why do you become an individual when it's time to take responsibility for the crimes of Israel? Suddenly I'm an individual. Don't portray me as part of the Jewish community. Or take this move. Even if one, and most Jews are secular these days, I think. Secular Jew. But the operative word is not secular, it's Jew.
Right.
So you're saying that I am part of an ethnic group, a cultural group. No problem. Like you say, African American. I'm part of an ethnic group with a history, and I'm proud of it. You understand? At least most days I am. But some days I'm not, by the way. I ain't one of these. If my people were doing to any other people what the Jews in Israel are doing to the Palestinians, I would be an individual and condemn Black people. You understand? Now, but there's another move that's made. And this is why I was not satisfied with Jewish Voices for Peace. Girlfriend, your job as a Jew is to go to the front, the vanguard of the struggle against your own ruling class, against your own criminals of your people. You go to the front. You don't change the discussion from Martin Luther King and James Baldwin to Audre Lorde. You don't do that. In other words, you abdicated your duty as a revolutionary, as a moral human being. You did precisely, and then going to say, well, I didn't know what the line was, because you didn't want to know what the line was. You still wanted, even as you protest, and I don't know how charged this one is protesting, even as you protest, you want a protection of your Jewishness. Like they say, my family stopped speaking to me. My sister don't speak. So what? That ain't a big price to pay for honor, for morality. Your sister don't speak to you, fuck her. And your mother. You understand where I'm coming from? But it's a big deal. What's all this y'all suffering? It's all. No, I don't have no empathy for you. See, the other side of it is to deny the extraordinary privilege that has accrued to them since World War II.
Right.
They are privileged. They assume privilege. They act like it. You understand? they act in a privileged way. We are supposed to have this. Or if you say, well, look, if y'all so oppressed, why are y'all 30% of all the tenured professors at all the elite universities?
Yeah.
Oh, see, and then why are y'all so prominent in Wall Street banks? And you are. Why y'all so controlling in Silicon Valley? The answer is because we are the chosen people. We are superior. That's always there. Now, I say the Jewish Voices for Peace and anybody else. Good, you protest, keep it up. But that ain't enough. You still ain't resolved the more fundamental question, like I'm gonna say, like Baldwin, who are you? I wanna get to your heart.
Right.
The heart ain't changed. You still playing both sides. You say black freedom, then Judith Butler said, but the trans are the most oppressed. You understand what I'm saying? Always shift the focus. You understand? You say Du Bois, you get a bunch of bums and assholes out in West Philly talking about revolution for land. Well, baby, this is Philadelphia. You understand? At the Free Library, they're black folk that are homeless, that live in shelters, that they stay in the Free Library during the day. Yeah. You understand? We had them in our beautiful human beings. Oh, all this black poverty is because black people are inferior, and they believe that they might be the most ideologically committed white supremacists in the American white population. There's a case to be made. Once you peel the layers back, is something very deleterious, very anti-black about that. And I'm still trying to figure out, like Danny Shaw told me, well, he's interested in studying the relationship of Zionism to pornography. I said, that's an interesting topic, but why don't you study the relationship of Zionism to gangster rap? You think if the gangster rappers were calling Jewish women bitches and hoes, that they would be that prominent? I don't think so. Somebody put the money up to promote that. And you had to be situated in the entertainment industry and have the money to do it. Meek Mill's supposed to be so down from North Philly and all that. You know Meek Mill's the rapper. He ain't worth a dime. He was over there with the owner of the Patriots football team and other prominent Jews at Auschwitz. Yeah. The only Negro in the thing. Now, what you doing over there? Why you over there? Yeah. I mean, what signal are you sending? Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. As a black man, he should be condemned as a sellout, a traitor, and an Uncle Tom, which he is, obviously. Ain't no, I mean, you listen to his, he ain't saying nothing. Okay, I made my point. Okay, forgive me. Last point. The moral demand for ideological clarity. This ain't a time to be on all sides of all questions. Malcolm X used to say, keep it plain, keep it clear. See, a lot of things are beyond question at this point. Too much talk is a way to avoid action, to avoid standing up. You know, I have a used to be friend, philosopher named Lewis Gordon. You know, I thought we was down at one time, you know, when I went through my thing at Temple. He started up, was down with me, and then the cat switched sides and went with Molefe Sante. You know, now he claimed to have been a member of the Communist Party. Now, Hey, look, Dom, I never saw you. And I used to, when you was at Yale, I was up in New Haven, Connecticut all the time. But okay, I'll let, if you want to build up your resume, go ahead. You're a radical philosopher, you deal with Fanon, and you was a communist. When at the end of the day, you ain't shit. And I'll tell you why I say this. First of all, from Jamaica, he's Jamaican, Chinese, Jewish, everything but an African American. And that's a hell of a move if you want to advance a career sometime. You're exotic, you ain't, you don't carry the weight of African American anger and militancy. So my man, who had, kind of sold me out, and I accepted it. I sent a message to him by one of his graduates. So I told him to kiss my fucking ass and punk, you better not come back to Philadelphia. And if I see you, I'm gonna deal with you. I went thuggish on it, and I meant that. And I'm not a thug. You know what I'm saying? But don't play no. Don't. I want you to know. Let me reintroduce my damn self. Okay. So I'm following all my Jewish friends on the internet, on Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook. I want to know, did you say anything about this? Lewis, have you said anything about what's going on in Gaza? Silent. You talk about everything else. You talk about the Rastas and all, but you said nothing. I said to myself, and I have other friends I ain't gonna mention, people I used to be in the Communist Party with. Hey, money, you ain't said nothing. You or your wife. Now, this friend, I was very aware of when he made his move to Jewish nationalism from communism. That's a beautiful thing. I mean, hell of a thing to see. Cat is talking one thing, and then suddenly you get in a certain situation, and now you're a Zionist. You understand? This is not a time for silence. It's not a time for ambiguity. It's not a time for I didn't know. Oh, I didn't know it was that bad. Oh, was it really like that? Oh, but Biden is going to protect a woman's right to choose. Oh, but, that kind of liberal that bullshit. Now, I'll just end on this. Israel must cease to exist as a state. If it uses nuclear weapons, the international community, including the largest powers, must go in and shut that shit down and arrest the leaders and hold them and put them on trial for a crime against humanity in the same way that the international community did to the Nazi regime in the Nuremberg trials. It is just on that level. If they even think about it, the world community must arrest them, shut that state down, occupy it, and demolish the Israeli Zionist state and declare Zionism a crime against humanity. It must be done. It has to be stopped. And again, the Nazis at least tried to do that bullshit in secret. Yeah. These people are doing it openly for the world to see and telling the international community, the UN, everybody, the International Court of Justice, giving them the middle finger. Fuck you. South Africa, you don't mean nothing to us. N-words, that's the way they think. They have to be shut down. There is no two ways about it. They're checkmated or checked. That's what the Iranians did. They told them, now you boxed in. Any way you turn, we got you. You understand? I don't know whether, boxing, you get a boxer, you get them in the corner, can't get out. And then but they got them boxed in.
Yeah.
This is huge. Military paradigm shift. Let's be real. The Israeli regime has killed over 2,000 leaders, scientists of the Iranian state. They have assassinated and then laugh about it. Yeah, we assassinated him. Shows how powerful we are. Iran has never assassinated an Israeli leader. But now, like they say, what goes around comes around. Okay, now we got you. And that's what April 13th showed. We ain't throwed our best shit at you, but we want you to know you boxed in. The next time you think 300 was something, we coming with 1,500. And we're going to use our good shit on your ass. We're going to get you. Now you locked in, you boxed. Okay? You haven't defeated the Gazans. They've suffered. They have suffered. And there's no way to minimize it. What they have done is a genocide carried out by a Nazi regime, and that's what they are. But then, on the north, Hezbollah. We ain't hitting you hard, but 100,000 of y'all got to move. You living in hotels in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem at the expense of the government. That ain't got no money like that. That's why they want to send that 25 billion over there to keep the state going. You understand? And they sending more. They get money, all kind of money from the West, especially the United States. But 100,000 had to get out of there. I'm not hitting you hard, but I'm touching you. Let you know. Hamas ain't going nowhere. Hamas done and I think you all know this. About 20 brigades of the Israeli armed forces were forced out of Gaza. Said they went so they could rest and relaxation and no. That behind was being spanked. Yep. I'm coming up out of tunnel, destroying them tanks. I thought y'all was indestructible. You couldn't destroy the resistance in over 6 months. This is great news for humanity. Great news. Hezbollah got you on the north side. We got you on the south side. Then they said, we're going to go in Rafah and kill 20, 30,000 more. And say it up. That's the thing. Ain't no secret. No, we're going to go in there. 1.5 million people there. We're going to kill 20, 30,000 more, y'all. 20,000 children. It don't mean shit to us, because they're nothing but insects. Okay? Biden trying to act like it is simple stuff. Oh, I'm trying to hold them back. Well, motherfucker, why you sending them more 2,000-pound bombs? If you're trying to hold them back. Cut them off if you're trying to hold them back. It's a dependency. They can't exist without the United States. No. Oh, I'm trying to hold their hand. I'm going over there trying to talk to them and shit. No, you're not.
Right.
You're perpetrating. Everybody know that. Okay? The Israeli economy is contracting at a rate of 20% a year. They can't feed themselves. They can't produce shit. Everybody is in the army. They cannot wage a protracted war. That's always a strong hand of asymmetric warfare. I can't beat you at one thing, but I'm going to draw you out. Like they say in boxing, I'm going to take you out in deep water.
Mm.
I'm gonna see if you can swim.
Yeah. Yeah.
Punk,
Yeah.
faggot.
Mm.
Since you so bad, you know, since on the West Bank you go up to a child and blow their brain. Since you all that, come on. Now let's do a man-to-man thing. Yeah, you're killing my children. Yeah, you're killing my mother. Yeah, you're killing my father. We accepted that loss, but we coming at you. And then they killed the children and grandchildren of the head of Hamas.
Yeah.
Killed them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They were going to a wedding or something, and they droned them in a car. Come on. But yet, any protests against Israel, oh, you're an anti-Semite. Well, that now being called an anti-Semitic by the Zionists is a badge of respect. Oh, I'm hey, good, I embrace it. You call me that? Good, because you're nothing but a Nazi. And that's what it is. So, you know, I'm shut up. You know, I was very upset with the way that woman presented herself, act like she didn't know what was going on. If you didn't know what was, why'd you accept to speak on the occasion? It was made clear what was going on.
Right.
But you don't accept it. Because, and she had to prove it to me. You wanted a backup. You wanted an escape back into your white supremacy and Zionism. And no matter what they say, people like that, they want to preserve whiteness. They don't want to get at up. You know what I'm saying? That's what all that trans shit is about. That's bullshit. Ain't nothing new. Trans people, ain't no, you know. But what y'all doing, y'all done weaponized it into an ideological movement. Upholding whiteness. That's what it is. Can't say I'm with the LGBTQs. I said beautiful. But what is your position on white supremacy? Are you using that as an escape route? Hold on to my whiteness in a different form. You understand? Fascism in a different form. Essence still the same. Lastly, Cornel West. I don't know why. You know, we came, you know, with the thing of an alliance of the three uniting the discontentedness of the American people. Okay, Cornel West back got making a clown of his fucking self. You understand? I thought you wanted to run for president. I didn't know you was running not to run for president. You know, if you're gonna run for president, be for real.
Right.
You know, if you're gonna try to show yourself as an idiot, you done made yourself look bad. Going from party to party, then you're gonna start your own party, and you on the ballot in 2 states, Alaska and Oregon, and all that kind of nickel and dime bullshit. But what it is, you cannot deal with the great moral political choice of this time. He prefers Biden. Yeah. I don't care what he says about Gaza, he prefers Biden.
Yep.
And if he gets in the way of the re-election of Biden, he would rather make a fool of his fucking self, which he is doing. And the faith that so many people put in him. You know, one of the worst things you can do is to betray ordinary people. You know, don't talk out of both fucking sides of your mouth. Navalny in Russia is not Julian Assange. Why you put on Mumia? Why you gonna put all that bullshit? One is a representative of the CIA and the Western imperialists. Mumia ain't in jail because he's a representative of U.S. imperialism. So how you put all that together and say you standing against imperialism and Putin is nothing but a thug and Biden is a milquetoast liberal, and all that old nickel and dime bullshit. The dude's finished. I'm disappointed to an extent I can't tell you. You know, and my last, and so me and Serafina was talking about this. You know, I was listening to Garland Nixon's show, and he had Gerald Horn on there. Just talk. Could you narrate? Could you get, connected? Get to the point, yeah. And then when Garland asked him about the election, he got weak in the knees. What you saying when I said weak in the knees?
Yeah.
You know, all the talk and all the memory. That got help, man. I give him that. That memory he got, but anyway, we'll talk about it. But he's still in this thing that Trump is an existential danger to democracy.
Yeah.
He said it in 2017 that Trump has to be stopped, quote, by any means necessary. Hometown, are you prepared to become a part of that any means necessary? Is that what you're saying? And unless you write on this question of the 2024 election and what is, you can say, tactical or strategic objective of the people's movement, everything else you're saying don't mean a damn thing. I don't care how smart you are, you know. And that's what all these cats know. I'm so smart. I wrote so many books and I know so much and shit, you know. But I say, like Munchie used to say, I want to know what's in here.
Right.
And if you're a punk, I don't care how smart you're still a punk. You're still a punk. You could not say in the face of this what has to be said. Biden wants to extend the war in Ukraine and extend the war in Gaza till after the election. And then resume the same thing. They don't give up. They must be defeated. Gerald Horn is a moral coward. Moral fucking coward. You could have made, but then when you have to listen to it. And I'm learning because he got a lot of facts and shit. I'm like, wow, okay.
Right, yeah.
I'm impressed, shit, man. Even though I don't like the guy no more. I don't. I consider him a pathological liar and a moral coward. I do. Would say it to his face. Know him good. Pathological liar. I was saying this to Dwight. I said he didn't just, in that book, Counter Revolution of 1776, 1770, he didn't just make errors. He lied continually in the book. Lied. I mean, it was almost pathological lie. But then, when it comes to the strategic, we must defeat Trump. He must, and the Arabs in Michigan and other places, they are right. They are right. You know, abandon Biden. You can't play. They ain't know well, he's gonna protect a woman's right to choose. Fuck that. If he's supporting a regime that's threatening to take humanity to nuclear war, get your priorities straight. I'm sorry that I curse so much today. Forgive me for cursing, but I don't curse that much in free school. I curse in private, as you know. But I think Emily, she went someplace. I know her stomach is hurting. But that's all. Maybe somebody, y'all have something to say. Go ahead.
I just had observations of what you said about Israeli society. And, it's little known what you said, especially about 48. And, I was part of student movement for Palestine.
Yes.
And, it was a place where like-minded people came to study about Palestine and colonization. And I would say that pre-56, nobody knows.
Yeah.
And that's why I respect Norman Finkelstein a lot, because he, like you, knows the history of Israel and Palestine, not what's taught, even, in circles or in the academy, but the real history, which is that Ben-Gurion was a Leninist, and the Soviet Union and the world community, through international law, established Israel. And
I didn't know he was a Leninist.
yeah, I think I listened to Scott Richardson. Yeah, he was Leninist,
Okay.
and the Zionists were about socialist Leninists, and correct me, but I think the kibbutz is based off the idea.
Somewhere, and that was the hope. Yeah.
And the Bund before the kibbutz,
Mhm.
but also yeah, but, as you said, nobody except for Norman Finkelstein talks about what Zionism originated at, what it's developed into, and this thing about Hebrew being Hebrew international standard being closer to Yiddish than any Arab language, Russian still being if Hebrew is such a is the language of the Israelis. Why do so many still speak Russian? Why do so many speak Yiddish? Why do so many speak Polish? Are they really a people?
Interesting.
So that's what I wanted to get into, because at Temple, Brandon organized a intervention into an Ethiopian IDF soldier coming to speak to the Jewish Center. And it was just an interesting interaction, because all the students who were non-white were from Temple or SJP, or they're part of Black and Brown Coalition. So they already came in, we're against colonization. And all the other students were Jewish students from the Israeli, the Jewish Center Temple. And I learned a lot by listening to her, that her mother in Israel she was from Ethiopia, and she came, they call them, I don't know I might get some words wrong because I read them, I don't pronounce them, but Aliyah, and she had made Aliyah from Ethiopia, I don't know when, and she was in a re-education camp so she could transition to Israeli society, because she had an Ethiopian culture. She spoke the African mother tongue. She didn't understand the false, made up, synthetic Israeli, identity. And I just was a little shocked that it was just out in the open, like, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong. Like she's in a center for people from Africa where she needs to get integrated. That's a re-education camp. I'm sorry, that's what they have in China for Uyghurs. And yeah, I just want to talk about Israeli society. Obviously, the top is Ashkenazi, and the middle is Mizrahi and Sephardic. The Jews from North Africa, and the Middle East, and Levant. And they're the working class, because the Israelis didn't want Palestinians. And that's what I wanted to say is, to these socialist organizations that say, oh, we have to support both the Israeli working class and the Palestinian working class. The Mizrahi are the bulk, the mass of the Likud party, and so they are the ones who every election bolster, the Likud into power. So it's not like the Middle Eastern Jews are liberal either. And so then there's the Sephardic, and then there are the Palestinians pre-48. That's what Israeli society is. Nobody talks about a caste system of Israeli society. Nobody's interested in studying that, but that's what it is.
Yes.
And so then you have on the bottom tier, you have the Israelis, the Palestinians who lived in 48 and never left. And you'll hear some Israelis say, oh, well, they're in the government, or they're a judge, so we're not racist. But they would never actually have power. They would never become a prominent politician. They would never contribute to Israeli society, because it would be a threat to their to the status quo, the hierarchical Israeli racialized society. And I forgot to mention, then you have African Jews at the bottom. And if Israel is a Jewish state, why did they sterilize Ethiopians coming into Israel? They didn't want them to reproduce. It's speak plainly, as you said, and it's because it's a racist society. And this, I didn't know what you said about Yiddish being a language that produced all this literature. I'd love to, read or learn about that. And that's what Zionism did to Jews. It took all this wide, group of people. You were German, you were Polish, you were Ethiopian, you were Libyan, and it compressed them. It homogenized them into a people with no history of a false synthetic, status, a synthetic, peoplehood that was really built on a myth that there were no people here, and that we were the ones who were the chosen people who. But as you said, it's not genetically, it's not politically, it's not culturally vibing, and that's why genetic testing in Israel is, against the law. Because that's, don't quote me on it, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's
I think
true.
we talked about it. Yeah, and at the bottom are the Palestinians. Finally, you get to the Palestinians at the bottom of the society, and they have their own divisions. The Israeli society is really divided, and it is, synthetically held together. And then I also think I've been thinking about, this thing about, I think about it a lot, Israel before '56, because it was a social society. It's the cost of failure. If we want to build a new nation, a failure in a social, maybe this is true, maybe this isn't, but if you fail a socialist revolution, the outcome is fascism. And that's just what I think.
So that's our palm dot, the Indian.
Yeah. Failure. Failure to produce a social society will result in. And so, as socialists, we should take on this responsibility to because the price is high. I think that's what happened with this.
Well,
Go ahead. How do you feel about this time?
I feel okay. I did hear you talk about. I was listening to the live stream on my phone as I went down to the
Her
restroom.
stomach is.
So, yeah, thanks. So thanks for letting everyone know. But yeah, when
It's so apparent that you're not totally here.
Oh, yeah, I'm
But
sorry.
that's all right.
But yeah, I think like when you were talking about Israel, like the thing I really thought about was how Israel is a warning sign for America.
Okay.
Because I think it's also connected to our event on Thursday where Jewish Voice for Peace was disappointing. Like the representative from Jewish Voice for Peace was disappointing because like the thing about Israel is it is, first of all, like Israel is as a people, a nation, like it's not just its government, that its government is too right wing. It's that as a people, like you have taken, as a people and a nation, you've taken for granted the empathy of humanity. And rather than it becoming a responsibility truly for never again of people to be oppressed, instead it became basically a sort of accept that you are special, you're an exception, and that anything to the point where it's a place where the people are like the people need to commit themselves. Like the people of Israel would have to have committed themselves to actually challenging like not just their own government, but a certain set of values that had become corrupt. And I think it's a warning to America because, first of all, this goes back to the event on King, because first of all, the only reason why America is not more like Israel, so deranged, so ill, so sick on what is ideological white supremacy, is because they like basically the Jewish people of America, like even the ones so courageously standing up for Palestine, you owe something to African Americans. Because the only reason why America is not more like Israel, so deranged, is because of the existence of Black people in this country. And it's also, you owe King something. You also owe, it's not just you owe Black people something, you also owe the civil rights movement something. And you owe King something, which is why what you said, there's a bit, it is true. I think Jews in America have a strong sense of ideological white supremacy.
Yes.
And I think it's really important for us to say it like that, because, I think that's really triggering. And then I also think it's very triggering for Jews to basically pose the possibility that Jews are white supremacists, because they're like, oh, you calling me racist, but I'm a minority. But see,
Yeah.
that's where you know it's not actually about where you stand on human life, where you stand on both the moral and political questions. It's a sort of, like you said, it's a sort of mentality, it's a sort of ideological position that makes you want to turn the victims into the victimizers.
That's right.
And
And that's what they did to us.
yes.
I mean, you wouldn't, I saw it with my own eyes where they flipped on us. Because, Black people, in our naivete, in our desire for allies, we looked up to Jews. You would hear Black people say, look, you would hear this, it's wrong, but you would hear, look, the Jews, they were discriminated. They couldn't own a hotel in Miami, Florida. And what did they do? They bought the hotel. So that was, look what they did. And they were supposed, among a certain, group, part of the Black people. But most of us looked to Jews as the most anti-racist of the white population. And then they flipped on us. Flipped, and then tried to use Farrakhan as the justification. And can I just tell you one other thing? Came out with poll after poll proving what? Black people are the most anti-Semitic group in the American population. We saved your simple asses.
Right. Yeah.
We.
Right.
I wouldn't lie. They, in the 1980s, poll after poll, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, this one, the other one, Brookings, and all. We are the most anti-Semitic group in the entire. Do you realize the betrayal? It takes a lot to turn against Black people like that. You turn on Black people, you ain't worth shit.
Right.
Especially still beleaguered, still impoverished, still trying to advance our struggle the best way we can. And you, with all the power, and let me just say one other thing, if I might. I hate to, we ain't never made no movie stereotyping Jews.
Right.
Never. They did of us. All that old Uncle Tom and all that shit, them Black movies in the 30s and 40s. They were in charge of Hollywood. Okay, you said, well, that's not everything. And it's not. In fact, there were more anti-racist Jews back then than now. But we didn't do that to Jews, but it was Jews that did it to us. And we're still living with the impact of those stereotypes. It affects, children who would see that, like Stephen Fetchit, King, all them kind of bullshit names and movies. We didn't control fucking Hollywood. We couldn't do. Children would see that and say, well, I can't do math because I'm inferior. It's something I'm telling you, but yet now they flip and say, hey, look, and don't come up in here when we trying to do something for King and you gonna shift the narrative. Fuck you. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Because that's what I was gonna say.
Cursing too much, man.
Because that's what I was gonna say about Jewish Voice Your Peace too as well, like the woman at the event. Because for me, I'm like, okay, so you're at the forefront speaking, actually, like at these rallies, speaking out against the genocide in Gaza, which is very good, great. But then it comes to a question of if you are not all in for King and you feel like you actually have to reduce King, and then what's implied is also reduce men, then I question what you actually think of the Palestinian people.
That's right.
Because most of the people fighting in Palestine are men, the freedom fighters. So I question what you actually think of the Palestinians. Or is it just
I'm sorry.
Or is it just Palestinian women and children, you view them as just victims rather than as a freedom movement, freedom fighters. And then it comes back, because then I question what you actually think of Black people. Because is it just that you value Black women or Black queer people or Black trans people, or is it that you actually understand the significance of the African American people? Because the thing is Palestinians in Palestine they would see themselves as an oppressed people fighting for their existence, fighting for their dignity, fighting for their civilization, fighting for their future. Very common as the same in America and as African American people. Because the reason why I think it's important, to relate this is because the reason why I say it as Israel, I think, is a warning sign for America, is because it also is to say, we said it before, but there is credit, people must give the African American people credit in this country, because it is only because of Black people in this country, and because, whether you want to call it the fact that no matter what, Black people, despite being the most dehumanized, degraded in this society, held on to humanity, produced the blues, produced all this music, passed on a principle of love, which is the foundation of civilization. The fact that there was a civil rights movement, which opened the possibility of any people, immigrants, Jews, white people, to participate in what is a united struggle for democracy. All of that is any movement today for Gaza is actually owe something. And the fact that those courageous Columbia students, you owe something to the fact that there is a revolutionary history to America. That path was laid for you, whether you know it or not. And so that does go to the question of what you're saying, which is, yes, everyone speaking out for Palestine that's very important. But at the end of the day, there's also the question we all come home to is the question of our own nation. Because it's not just the Palestinians the Palestinians, it is a horrible attack. And the very people, Biden, the ruling elite, who are sending bombs to kill those children in Palestine, it is also, like Baldwin said, every day there are bombs in our own hometowns. There are bombs in our own cities, and it's been that way for decades. And at the end of the day, the same revolutionary struggle and support of the Palestinians is the same exact revolutionary struggle for our own nation. Yes. And so it does come down to the question of, is your heart changing when you view those children in Gaza killed? Or is it that you see it as still separate, that you're trying to save those children in Gaza, but that your own heart has not changed, that you also are trying to save yourself, that you must save your own, our own children in America. I think there is this question, which is what you were saying about the moral, that perhaps the most important moral question of today is, are you just going to accept that Biden is better than Trump? And because there's something, it's not just an electoral question, it's not just about the presidency. It is about it is about a question of morals. If you still think that Biden is still better, it says something about what you really believe, what you really see the crisis as. The other reason why I brought up the ideological white supremacy, why it's important to say ideological white supremacy, is because, again, maybe we didn't do it well enough on that Thursday event, but the whole point that we owe King something, because to connect war, poverty, and racism is to say that, if you feel if you oppose what's happening, the genocide in Gaza, means that you must oppose the poverty and racism in this country. That the violence happening in Gaza is a direct reflection of what we have allowed our own country to do. And it has effects on individual people's lives, including yourself, that you just may not want to recognize yet, that you are in denial of, because you do not want to take responsibility for actually changing your own heart and changing society. And I say that because the ideological white supremacy thing, I think, for example, it's why in free school, we have a line. We do have a line in free school, but it's not that foreign from what King is saying, which is, let's just say the white poor, Black African Americans, the discontented, including the Trump supporters, which is not just white people anymore, it's multiracial. they all do not subscribe to ideological white supremacy.
Right.
The way that you would see more crystallized in, let's say, like a lot of Jews.
Among the Jewish middle class.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so I think there's something important here because this is because what I'm also saying is that it's very important, I think, to name some of these things, because if like to see death, not just death of a people, but to see what white supremacy does to a whole civilization.
Yes.
And what it does to even the category of human beings,
Yeah.
humanity, what it does to like your own humanity, what it does, if that is to be like an important like rupture point in human history today, then it means that people, like including basically whatever, the Jewish middle class or any middle class, any young professional, any educated, no matter your education, no matter whatever, that there has to be an understanding that to see that fully in the face is to also mean you have to take the next step.
Yeah.
And what King was saying was that to actually break silence doesn't mean to just yell at a protest. Like, yes, important, it's very important, but that to break silence means to make a moral choice.
Yes.
Like in your own life, and to make a moral choice so that you can then participate in like the great revolutionary struggle to change this country. So yeah, I guess that's also me participating in the debrief we did last time, or maybe that's me also participating in the debrief we had at preschool last week that I wasn't at, which is there's still, I think maybe Jeremiah said this, but I forget who said it, but I do think that Thursday event where we were supposed to really explain what King meant by breaking silence, I actually feel like what he really meant maybe we're encapsulating more in this conversation of Israel. Yeah, and I also just want to say I agree. I don't think Israel has the grounds. Israel does not have the grounds to be a state anymore. It does not. And yeah, and I just, yeah, I think and we're going to talk about it with the China India stuff, but I think it's also makes me very proud, actually. I feel like this is like going to be, I feel like a lot of people don't want to say this because, again, people associate Western Asia with like terrorism and US propaganda, but yeah, you cannot help but feel a lot of pride to see these Western Asian countries like Iran stand up and say, I'm not afraid of you.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I'm not afraid of Israel because I'm also not afraid of the US.
That's
Yeah, and I'm not against the people necessarily, but I'm not afraid of this value system. I'm not afraid of the old world. And something Jewish Americans in particular must ask, because it is the question all Americans have to ask, and I do think other Americans have started to ask it, is why are you so afraid of a new world? Why do you feel like you need the protection, still need some sort of protection? Because if you feel you need protection, then it means you're still hinging your identity or something about yourself on something that is old. Because you're not ready to it means you're afraid of the new world.
That's right.
But a country like Iran is willing to say, okay, fine, go for it, Israel. If you want to show who you really are and take out your nukes, you should know that humanity, like dark humanity, is not afraid. Because we already, we have something that you, like those who follow ideological white supremacy have lost a long time ago, which is basically, which is what Baldwin says the key to civilization, and that's life.
Yeah.
To value life.
It had that hard kind of courage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, so yeah, that's what hearing when the way you started, it made me think a lot about. Yeah, it made me think a lot about as a warning sign to America. Yeah, and also just the credit to African Americans. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Paul.
No, I mean, Emily already covered a lot of the things that I was feeling, but one of the things, I know we're going to talk about the India-China stuff, but one of the things that I've been reflecting on also is how, the value system or the philosophy that as a people carry. I mean, of course, it has to do with history and civilization, but it also comes from the freedom struggles that have shaped them, So for instance, Indians, Chinese, Korean, there is an organic set of values or a way of knowing the world that's natural, that you're ideologically predisposed to. But then in order to be able to reject it, you have to make that choice to become white, which is what we see a lot. Like you see a lot, especially in American society, that you make a deliberate choice to reject what is natural, what shaped you, because you think making this choice will make life easier, more comfortable, materially, more pleasant, all sorts of things, the wages of whiteness, right? And I've always found it very hard to reconcile this historic truth that, the Jewish people, given the persecution they faced in Nazi Germany, given the role of the Soviet Union to defeat fascism, and then, all of that, it made sense to me, of course, that there was such overwhelming participation of the Jewish community in the world communist movement, for instance. You had these stalwart figures. But then I've always found it hard to reconcile the turn, that historic turn from that direction of being people who were white, who rejected whiteness, and then not being able to do it, not being able to take it all the way. And what you said about, their relationship to Black people, the betrayal of Black folk, and then the attack on the Black tradition was almost what solidified that choice. Because I think what it suggests to me is them saying, you are coming in the way of us being white, You're coming in the way, because Baldwin also talks about whiteness. He makes it concrete. It's not just an abstract thing. Whiteness is lying to yourself. It's denying your history. It's denying yourself the opportunity to really think about yourself and your history, to understand who you are and where you need to go. Just keep lying, constant lying, and just you build up this fabricated mythological world in which you can exist. And that's it. That's one of the things that I also feel like what it means to choose whiteness. And Black people were in the way.
I think
You cannot coexist with Black people, with the kind of struggle they were waging for a new America, for the last white nation, and still be able to, be white. If that's the choice you were making.
And then to turn on those people, even as they are poor and beleaguered. And you all are privileged. Jews are privileged, maybe the most privileged among the white population. And then privilege, and you turn on an impoverished people and think you didn't do no wrong because they're wrong, they're anti-Semitic. It's hard to put your head around. I'm sorry.
No. That's why this was very clarifying. I completely agree with Emily. It's a cautionary tale,
A cautionary tale.
It is. What could happen if you don't take the moral choice to its logical conclusion?
Right. Well, it's also crazy because in some ways, when we talk about it in terms of the history of humanity, it could be like a cautionary tale from the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because chosen people of the book, it feels like they never really took the book seriously.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. If I may.
Go ahead, Ron.
I have a few thoughts. I'm trying to sort them out, but as a Jew myself, I notice a lot of Jews, Zionist and anti-Zionist, still, no matter what your ideological position is on Israel, you are still participating in the cultural ideology of Zionism, and more specifically, the weaponization of identity politics to the benefit of Zionism, regardless of your position. And to me, it seems that most anti-Zionist Jews, especially in America, because I don't really know much about European anti-Zionist Jews, but a lot of them have this virtuous self-importance and a weak discipline.
Weak discipline.
Weak discipline because of exactly what we've been talking about, where seems like many of them stay on the defense. Can't listen to a conversation like this, that's for sure. Struggle to deal with any of the hard truths that come with anti-Zionism. And like you had said before, it's like a trigger. Like they just have a visceral fight or flight response to it. Anti-Semitism is like still in the back of their mind as a function of Zionism. It's like something that Jews are like taught to fear, as if it's a real fear in America. Like Jews have no reason to really worry about anti-Semitism. It's like, oh, you got called a slur. Great. Are you actually in danger though? Are you really in danger? You got bullied by a stranger on the street. You're not in danger. And the biggest problem that Jews have to address, because Zionism will end. It's not going to remain. And no matter what side of the equation you're on as a Jew, you have to accept that. The biggest problem Jews face for the future is, I genuinely believe, just like after World War II, there needs to be a complete reformation of Judaism. As it stands right now, it is corrupted wholesale by Zionism and cannot function as it's kind of like just a chaotic religion right now with like any value system. It almost, I feel like there are certain books that are, like the Torah or the Tanakh, that are the word of God, that people will be like, yeah, but I uphold the Talmud above anything else. And I don't understand that. It's not the word of God. It's a book of debate. And I've noticed Talmudic Judaism be the source of a lot of this white supremacist ideology where like we're above Gentiles, Gentiles are below us, we are the chosen people, etc. And Talmudic Judaism is probably the closest tie to Zionism in terms of like the ideology, the ideological mechanisms within Judaism. I have a lot of notes. But yeah, the deflection of Zionists, the like ambiguity around it, is a reflection of weak character, and the ideological liberalism infecting the whole empirical world Judaism is a power structure that has to be purged wholesale from Judaism if it's going to even survive as a religion. Because if it continues on the path that it is as a collective religion, every sect of it will fall to chaos in some degree. And secular Jews are secular Jews. Some of them strictly use their Jewishness as identity politics. And don't even practice. They don't have really any knowledge of their religion. It's like being Jewish is just more brownie points for discussion and discourse. Yeah, it's pretty much all I got.
I just wanted to add, and grab Kate so I don't disrupt, but I'm pro one state, and it's because I'm not against religious Judaism. Like there's some people who want to return to the Holy Land, they want to live on a collective farm. Like I'm not against any of that, but I'm against the idea of the Zionism, the idea that the Jewish people in total are like a unique people, and that's what I wanted to say. But with a one-state solution, Jews would. It's not an anti-Semitic thing. Like we're not going to purge all the Jews. Like obviously, there's some who want to practice their religion near the Holy Land. And Layla Khalid says, the reason why Palestinians called them Jews is because that's how they describe themselves. They didn't have this like language of like Zionism. So let's when I was talking about Zionism earlier, I wanted to say it's a racist ideology. It's not the ideology that says, "Oh, I'm for people." It's an ideology of like negation against African and Palestinian. But yeah, I'm for religious Judaism, and I think that the one state provides the opportunity for the settlers to remain in the West Bank and practice their religion they want to without the state of Israel or the nationalism of Zionism. So.
Actually, what you said about
trivializing the boys and how like the abolition school, like everything is trivialized actually. What you had also mentioned, Emily, about what are you afraid of in the new world? Because I could also assume that it might be also easy to learn a lot of languages when people are able to talk to each other.
Right.
Like there's something about that makes me think about how people can relate ultimately on a different value basis, period. But when you were talking about the abolition school, everything is not value that should be valued. Martin Luther King, who made, or like what makes America besides Black people, like in the sense of what you had already mentioned, with the song, like the music. And like Alice was just sharing me something that Kanye was talking about with the rap industry, also like you had mentioned, mixed up, are based upon the investment, the white supremacist investment.
That's right.
Of a cultural narrative of people that doesn't exist.
That's right.
And
Could you restate that? That's so cute. Just say it one more time.
no, an investment of a cultural narrative of people that does not exist.
That's right.
Meaning there is no such thing as a nigger. There is no such thing as this, or like a man who is not a man. But in the grotesqueness of like this, because I think what I'm thinking about is why is there still a huge block in my head about moving into this new world? What is in the way besides also the culture, like the cultural of counter-revolution? And well, Kanye was saying that, well, it is true that a lot of rappers don't stand up against the ruling elite because they're getting paid by them. But the point is, why do we need their money? Why do we need the dollar? Like, what is valued about the dollar? For real. And I think a lot of people are even at that point alone in a certain type of terror and a certain type of schizophrenia. But the reality still is like what I'm trying to focus upon is why is it that young people cannot go against something that is also obvious, which is true. If hip hop is not a valuable culture, why do we succeed to accept it? If we don't like something, why can't we say that we don't like it? And I feel like it's as deep as the obvious point of why King is not understood as our personalities, meaning as what makes of our personalities is what makes Martin Luther King. Like what made Martin Luther King. Like the only way that we move forward with our personalities is if we also think, about the framework of mind of Martin Luther King. Like I'm really thinking about that, Michelle, when you have brought that up. Because it matters in terms of what can move forward and what is thrown aside in a new world, in a new and that matters a lot actually, because culture can also only come out in a positive way, or I don't think there's a way that culture can assume its role as a responsible agent in history without being able to reflect society or being able to reflect people. And in a sense, when we're talking, or like this thing where culture is reflecting a society that doesn't exist, it also makes people not achieve their own humanity, not achieve themselves. Like there's something backwards about that too. And when you're saying that not only the abolitionist school, but that the protection that JVP has with this banner of whiteness also means something that has died, but they just want to like they want to act like it's still there's something about that that is just not true. There's something about that almost, it's like when you look at the age of some people, even if they're young, they're very old. But if you look at the age of people who, like we had saw in our book club, who have come, whether they don't have any homes, don't have anything, don't have people, but have themselves, have their memory, have their family in their heart.
That's right.
You know that they're young, like you know that they have
Alive.
a living representative of a value system that is still meaningful, that
That's
still
right.
produces
We
something.
saw that.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, and I think that's also the difference, because I feel like young people also should be able to deserve to have that sense of life.
That's right.
And
That's right.
it's not even the point. It's not enough to say that we need to survive off of a consumer or even the dollar. Like, it's not enough. None of it is. And once, it's like, if we don't realize that, then we've sold our kind of souls to something, which would assume like that the world will end in like a click of a button, or assume something about a catastrophe instead of assuming, like you had reflected from the Civil War movie, a revolution, like the possibilities of a new people awakening. And I think that's also the price of the ticket. Like, that's the price. Are you willing also to die to live? Like, are you willing to
die for life?
To die for life, yes. And I don't think when you said that the Iranian people are not afraid of nuclear weapons, I know I'm not afraid of these weapons either. And that doesn't mean that I couldn't die, but that just means that I will die worth something.
Yeah.
And that also gives history a certain lesson. That gives, like, that's the whole reason for why in Baldwin's, like, I stopped hating Shakespeare. Why it's important when you excavate the poet that they're still there. Like, regardless of who survives this, there is something that survived, and that's an idea. When the idea whose time has come, that's what survives at the end of the day. And it doesn't matter if it's you or me.
I'm sorry. I can go.
Go ahead, support.
Well, I wanted to, I actually wanted to respond to something that you had mentioned before, but I was also thinking of what Serafina was just saying. Well, the first thing about how the comparison with with this regime, with the Nazi regime, and the fact that you're pointing out how, even back in the day, in the 40s, the Nazis, they felt the need to hide their, the most of their atrocities.
Yeah.
And today, it is an objectively different situation where, pretty much this is the line that, this is where we are, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to strut around to the world where we do it. And I was thinking of how, this is only possible because of the enormous amount of political and military cover that it gets from the US, right?
Absolutely.
And in terms of what it does to a people who, the people of Israel, for instance, who have really been subject to this propaganda their entire life, and this false sense of security, and I was thinking of what it comes at the cost of, and all of these institutions in the US, especially in institutions like the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and then the ADL, and so on and so forth. All of these institutions have been masquerading for decades as basically as civil rights organizations, and these have played. And that's how they have built up, building up the credibility. And this was reminding me a lot about the speaker from JVP too, where in order to make your case in which you don't have full faith, you try to have some kind of credibility. And she also mentioned about how, she had been trained by her, like black and brown, like seniors or comrades and so on and so forth. And it just, I'm like, when I heard it, it triggered something, but I didn't realize what it was back then. And why do you feel the need to say this? What are you trying to defend? What are you trying to prove? And I think a lot of it has to do with, just this culture itself, where you don't have any faith in yourself, because what has given you a sense of purpose or a sense of identity for this long has actually been based on these lies. They have been based on these lies that these organizations are the organizations that are supposed to defend freedom and democracy and so on and so forth. But they're ultimately based on this lie that they were trying to champion the civil rights cause. And therefore the 6-day war that you're talking about, the turn in the turn, I guess, in just in American Jewry or probably outside too, but this turn from which at which they moved from actually being committed to the cause of civil rights or to the cause of freedom in this country, and they had to turn from that moment onwards towards basically to embrace Zionism. And the generation, our generation or even a generation before, I guess, have been they have been completely subject to this propaganda forever. And what must it take for them to break out, or if it is even possible to break out of it is essentially giving up
good question
of your of pretty much your entire system, your entire system of realities, as Baldwin talks about it.
Yep.
And I was thinking that this is also something that I know that all of us are thinking, because we're reading Baldwin all the time, but how he talks about ideas such as freedom and democracy and all of and even peace, that these are not the concepts behind these words are not common, are not day-to-day ordinary things. They require something actually the concepts require something fundamental shift in it, because it's based on how you treat other people, and it doesn't come from, it's not a literal question of treating other people, but how you think about the rest of the world, how you think about black people, how you think about the other. And this is, I think when people talk, and when people try to establish their credentials, which I was talking about, it really shows that it doesn't come from you. This is something you are using it. You are using your activism to escape something, to escape some void, and some incapacity that you felt you've had, and you're trying to use this, to escape
Well, you
that.
have to establish your credentials as a civil rights fighter in order to be really against civil rights.
Right.
It's like Shakespeare, I think thou thus protest too much. So and that is, I'm telling you, and they work it that way. Oh, can I just say, if you don't mind me, you're right. If the ADL, the American Jewish Committee, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and other associates, if this is the civil rights movement, then what was the civil rights movement? If they are the civil rights, and they make that claim, just one small thing, in 1995, over 1.5 million Black men marched to Washington, known as the Million Man March, organized by Farrakhan. I don't know how he survived, but it was such a monumental thing to do. Why y'all attacking it? What y'all got to do with it? I mean, what y'all got to say about trying to buy all of the house Negroes off, all the bootlickers, to condemn it? What y'all got to do? I mean, why is it that y'all got something to say about what we do all the time?
Right.
And just one small thing. You know this quote with collective guilt. So since y'all follow Farrakhan, now we're gonna go after the whole Black community. None of y'all. You just don't know. You just and go, I'm sorry.
No.
The height of evil. You ain't the civil rights movement. This is the creation of the Black masses. There ain't no Jewish civil rights leader. They're Jews that participated with the civil rights movement. You weren't in no Montgomery bus boycott. Get the fuck out of here. Arrogance and lying in the name. But the other thing, small matter, maybe 20 million people. If you're on the wrong side of history, your future as a people cannot be guaranteed.
Nope.
Keep fucking around. Keep fucking around. I mean, in fact, the Nazis at least try to hide it. Didn't nobody know about it. Then when they fucking said, oh shit, y'all do it right out in the open and call the people that you insects.
Yeah.
And then refer to some shit in the Old Testament where you have the right to wipe every child and woman and every, you say that shit openly. That people, and unless the Jews openly and consistently and without qualification say that if that is what you are saying, I will fight that to the death. They ain't said that yet. They ain't said that.
No.
And I'm telling you the truth. And you're right. See, when you have accepted something, it becomes a part of you. How do you extricate yourself from it? How do you get on the right side? How do you carry out a revolution of values? Because you're fucked up right now. And somebody needs to tell you to your face, ain't no reform in you. You got to go through a radical transformation. I can't reform you. The corruption is too deep. Too deep. And when they attack people, you ain't no good. The corruption is too deep there. Good, I'm sorry, sir.
No, yeah, I mean, the other thing I was thinking of is, how, I was thinking also about last week's conversation and, how the category of the anti-Semitism being the most fundamental, the most fundamental category of oppression. And then, of course, it reminds me of Judith Butler and of the gender as the category. And it seems that identity politics as itself and the gender question, and then all the movement that it gave rise to, LGBTQ and trans movement and so on, they all really it comes from the same. It's almost like the etymology of all of these movements come back to the question of American Jewry and Zionism. This is the ultimate defense. I think that's what I was saying. The ultimate defense of identity and in weaponizing identity in order to defend whiteness and white supremacy. And I agree that all of these trends need to at every point be they need to be reviewed because the future of the world depends on it. That all of these movements are basically part of the same attempt to defend whiteness. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a connection there. Like when you said, it's like the criminal pointing their finger at the innocent. Like this thing of you accuse everybody of doing the worst possible thing, to almost distract or to try to make yourself innocent. And yeah, I feel like there's a certain almost paranoia, or there is something pathological about this need to basically turn the victims into the victimizers and say like, no, like I'm innocent, like everybody else is wrong. And I do think that when I was reading Judith Butler, it was basically the exact same vibe that I got. And I think that's why last week, like I was trying to make the connection back to like her coming out of like post-World War II, like the Holocaust, and then saying that what happened to Jewish people was basically the worst possible thing to ever happen, that it's like the singular disaster. And I do think that she is directly then connecting it to like the question of queer identity. And I think it actually reveals something about what the basis of Jewish identity is meant to be, where I don't think it's like about being a people or about being like a nation at this point. I do think it's more of like an identity politics thing, where it's on the surface, like you use it to basically, instead of achieving your own identity or your own authority, to actually say, this is who I am, like this is what I stand for. Instead, it's kind of just like a power play or like a weapon that you can use to say like, this is where I am, pecking order. Like you can't touch me, you can't do anything to me. And I feel like that's kind of where it's playing out. And I think that's also in a way why in Israel, like they're able and willing to be so blatant about what they're doing to the Palestinians, because they think that that victim card like has worked, or that it should work. Where like they think that if they just say it loudly enough, that like, no, they're the victims, or that no, they're innocent, and that actually everybody else is wrong, that they can make that narrative true. And I kind of think that a similar phenomenon or dynamic also does play out in America. Like even, I guess, like with Trump, and then versus like this ruling class tendency to say like, actually, like we're on the side, we're the champions of the oppressed. Like the Democratic Party is the champion of the oppressed. Like we love queer people, we love immigrants, and like these are the most oppressed.
We love women.
Yeah, like that kind of, that same. And I don't know, it's like, for one thing, I think it's a bullying tactic. And the other thing that I see is that this type of identity or identification, or this kind of like ideological stance to try to bully people into like accepting like a very shallow, like not reality, I think it is a real obstacle to like the American people being able to achieve
It is.
their identity too. And yeah, I think in that sense, yeah, I feel like Zionism is holding America back in multiple ways. Like there's the concrete way of how it's actually playing out in international relations, like with literally this war, the fact that we're sending billions of dollars of aid, like that's a real contradiction. But then also I think in the way that Americans will think of themselves or as their identity, because I think it's related to how you were saying that the Jewish people and Jewish Voice for Peace need to actually like really consider like, what is my identity? Like, is it just that I'm like a Jew, so like I have something that I need to do here? Or is it also like I'm truly an American? And if I'm going to be an American, like I have to achieve like a moral identity that is also relevant to the rest of humanity. Because I think that that's also the thing with like being scared of the new world. Where it's like, if like we as Americans do not need to be afraid of the new world if we can become a new American people, like that's how. But it's still sort of stuck in this, like, oh, I'm Jewish, like, oh, I don't want to be Black, oh, like, actually, I want to be white. And I want just to find a way out where I don't feel guilty.
That's interesting.
But I don't have to achieve something actually, like, in my own soul.
Whiteness with certain built-in extra protection.
Yes, whiteness with extra, whiteness plus. Yeah, well, that's the other thing, where it's like, if you're white and Jewish, or like white and queer, white and like non-binary, or white and a woman, then that also basically separates you from all the other white people who are just white, or like maybe white and for Trump, or like white and
but white with protection.
Yeah, because it's like
With other protections.
So,
I'm sorry. Forgive me.
One thing I wanted to ask you was what.
Well, go. You go and then Shantanu.
My fault. But
Go ahead.
the thing that we were talking about, you guys are going back and forth about what Black people actually gave humanity, like the gift for humanity. Like you wouldn't be able to love yourself without James Baldwin. That's just
That's so interesting.
that's just plain. Like what you had said, well, about the sports teams, like Black Eagle Jump Higher and everything. Well, the thing is that you wouldn't. It's almost like you can't do anything without love and you couldn't be able to understand it at all without being shown by Black people what it really costs and what it really is. And yet there's still this like what are you trying to protect in whiteness? Like what is whiteness? Like what do you want? So I just wanted to say, like, the gift to humanity that Black people also is giving, continues to give, is the nature of love and how you're able to use it.
Go ahead, Shanti.
Dang.
It's so
Thank you.
good. Yeah, it's so good.
I think that the Jews in Israel right now, the idea that they have of themselves, or the idea that they wish, the idea that they of themselves that they wish for, and the idea that they wish other people would believe of them,
Yes.
is at war with the idea of themselves that they know deep down that they are.
Interesting.
And I think that this war inside is made more apparent by the war in Gaza. And I've really been thinking about what young people need to hear at this point to realize that, you know, every decision that they make, every individual life decision that they make is also reflective of what happens in the rest of the world.
Okay.
And what they need to hear. And I was on my way here, I was reading Take Me to the Water, and Baldwin describes this French-Algerian conflict, and how the Algerians were living in France at the time.
Yeah.
And I started to read like two lines where he says that the Algerian and I were both alike, victims of this history. And I was still a part of Africa, even though I had been carried out of it nearly 400 years before. The question of my identity had never before been so crucially allied with the reality, the doom of the moral choice.
Good. With the reality, the what?
The doom
The doom.
of the moral choice. The irreducible inconvenience of the moral choice is that it is, by definition, arbitrary, though it sounds so grandiose, and on the surface unreasonable, and has no justification but or in itself.
Say no justification
But itself. But
itself.
or in itself. My reaction in the present instance was unreasonable on its face, not only because of my ignorance of the Arab world, but also because I could not affect their destiny in any degree. And yet their destiny was somehow tied to mine. Their battle was not theirs alone, but was my battle also. And it began to be a matter of my honor not to attempt to avoid this loaded fact. And I think that this is exactly what I guess I need to hear, and by extension, everybody needs to hear.
Right.
That you can try to escape all you want, but at the end of the day, you can't escape destiny, and destiny ties us all together in some way, shape, or form. And I think that the protests going on at Columbia and at Yale, I think this gives me hope. And without this semblance of hope, you can't live.
And I think that America is on its way to becoming the last white nation, but I hope that, well, Israel doesn't take its place, you know,
Israel doesn't.
take its place.
Ooh, gross, nasty.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But you know, I still have hope. And,
Yeah.
I think that the event that we had was very reflective of all of these things that we have to be keeping in mind as we engage, as all of these people put. And you know, I was also a little put out by the woman at the event, and I don't know. I don't think I really understood why this reaction came from myself. You know, like I knew what to react to, but why was it took me a little while to think about. And I think it comes down to that point that King died for all of us. King died for all of us. And he died for you too.
They don't see it that way. They really don't. And you know, this is the desecration. And that's what is so, you know, I know Emily reacted far more strongly immediately to it than the rest of us did, you know. You did, you really did. And you were right. You were right. But I'm talking about, yeah. But you visceral, raw, you know, that but it took me some time, you know, because so much to focus on it. And the question is, just like Nuri said about Judith Butler, is this a strategy to preserve an identity, which in fact is morally indefensible? The identity, not just what you say, but what is in the deep structure of you. This is, I guess, this is where Baldwin is so useful and so helpful. Like he said, King brought the civil rights movement into the hearts of every American.
Yeah.
And that's a gift. But maybe not every American, or there's something that mediates that truth, which goes against that. And that's the big question, I guess. How can your identity reconcile two opposite moral claims at the same time? How do you live like that? I'm sorry.
It can't. I think it's a hypocritical stance. And I think what Emily said was really relevant, that how does this woman view Palestinian men? I thought it was very relevant because I really thought, okay, after this war ends, you're going to be saying that Palestinian men are oppressing their women.
Already saying.
Yeah, exactly. But it's that they're kind of irreconcilable beliefs, and that happens when you have no beliefs. I feel like you just pretend to have beliefs to show the world and get whiteness plus.
No, there's something I'm trying to wrap my head around with the timing of this, because I mean, in your introductory remarks, it was very important. Like, what stuck with me from what you said was how you said Israel as the formation of Israel as a state has reached its expiration date, and there will be no future.
I wish I'd said that well.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Reached its expiration.
Yeah, and there is no future unless it's a reinvention, and of course that's a mirror for like the situation in America as well. But I also think how hard we're going, or what we're probing with Jewish Voices for Peace, is very important, because I think naively, with the first formation or the resurgence or emergence of Jewish Voices for Peace,
I assumed it was a very positive, like, political development, and it is, but it's also much more nuanced and much more deeply reflects the complexity and also the hypocrisy of the American psyche than I had initially assumed. Because I always also go back to this line from Baldwin where he says, like, he talks about the gap between who you say you are and who you really are, and how life is an endeavor in order to reconcile these two gaps. But something that I feel we've also talked a lot about is how whiteness dramatically increases this gap between what you say you are and what you actually commit yourself to doing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I always think back to the Gazan children as well, or the people, the men and women of Gaza who say, like, yeah, of course, like, I'll die for my country. And it is a fact. And they can be 7 years old and say that and mean it, and they will die. And it's the dramatic opposite with these Zionists. And the last thing that I was thinking about was actually the Montgomery bus boycott, because, like, I find the formation, or I just find that period really interesting, like the inflection point of the bus boycott, and then the process of the first year and a half, and how it set a certain blueprint for the next 10 years of the movement. But I was thinking about it because I guess you could say, like, the inflection point was Rosa Parks choosing to not yield her seat that day. But that was not really so much the moral choice, so much as, like, actually all of the sacrifice that all of the Black community of Montgomery shouldered for the next year tirelessly. And the sacrifice only deepened. And something that King talked about in Stride Toward Freedom, but also Coretta talks about in her autobiography, was how essentially how deep the sacrifice was at the end of that 1 year, where for 1 year, these people had been walking, like, they were about to brave another winter. And that always really stuck with me, that like, more was demanded of them. And King said, can I demand more? And I feel that now that it's been at least 6 months since the rise of this, like, anti-Zionist Jewish movement, actually, I'm waiting to watch them pay their dues. I'm watching to see the sacrifice be made, and I'm concerned about what is going to happen if they continue not to make it. Like, is the movement just going to expire? Is it going to reveal itself as something like the Black Lives Matter movement? Like, what's going to happen? But I'm also concerned about, like, how this will affect the American conscience and the American psyche, and, like, the makings of the new American people. I feel that it'll be a negative development, or a confusing development.
Why do you say so?
Well, I think something really important has to be tested or checked here. If these are the faces of the American anti-Zionist movement, you cannot separate yourself from King. You can only be based in the lineage of the Black freedom movement. Otherwise, where are you? You know what I'm saying? There's something much more veiled here than I had initially thought about. And, like, I appreciate us assessing, like, that Thursday event again, because these are a lot of things that I had missed the first time that, like, I had heard it, because I was surprised. Like, I also haven't had that much contact with JVP, but I was like, oh, I thought it takes everything for a Jewish person to say I'm anti-Zionist. And then I realized, like, oh, actually, that's cheap talk. Like, yeah, it's actually it's easy talk. It's easy talk for you, especially when all these people are taking that line now. But can I watch you pay your dues? Like, yeah.
Well, actually, this is gonna be brief, but this conversation actually made something clear to me about JVP and Anissa specifically on that panel. And there's something that the left and Jews share, which is that level of arrogance. Where how can you sit through an hour of a time to break silence, and the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, I want to honor someone else. And I was trying to, like, we were trying to pinpoint, I feel like after the event, where was this coming from? Is this because she had some like connections to the left? Is it because of, I don't know what, but this conversation is making it clear, which is that there's, yeah, like that's a shared trait. And even when we talk about human values, even leading up to the event, I was like, I was talking to her on the phone. I was like saying, hey, like this is the event. And I feel like I didn't do a terrible job of explaining what we were about. And she gave no indication that she disagreed. And I was like, how can you? And that's when she showed up and I was like, what the fuck? I was like, all along, you've been telling me on these phone calls, like, oh yeah, like king, blah, blah. And then I teach it to my students and it's so relevant for these times. When something like Palestine is happening, and then come to the event, like this is like the schizophrenic behavior that we see, and this conversation is actually helping me to make sense where, like, Jewishness, is that a true identity, or is it based on like a certain lie, certain history, a certain community, like community values? And that whether or not you are Jewish or whether or not you are religiously Jewish or ethnically, but there's that trait that's still present, which is like, how is that different from Zionists that lie and are arrogant and believe that they're better than other people?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, because this issue of Palestine becomes another card for you to say, I'm one of the good ones, actually.
Right.
And that's actually really gross. But
Yes. It's grotesque.
Because then, like, how do you even, it's much easier to confront you when you actually are like, oh no, this is what I am. But instead, you're maneuvering.
Yeah.
And I forgot my thought, but yeah, the lead up and then also the event was really shocking. And then I think that's why Baldwin is also so important, which is that, like, that gap that Michelle had mentioned, but also how in every revolutionary movement, like that was also the thing that she disagreed or didn't blatantly disagree, but disagreed with, which is we kept talking about revolution of values, kept talking about love. But she was like, no, strategy, and I don't know what she was talking about.
Right.
And so essentially what she was saying is that, revolution of values, like, that doesn't matter. Love, that doesn't matter. Like, transformation of human beings, that doesn't matter. All we need to do is what I'm doing right now, like, which is action, which is, like, protest. But the interesting thing was actually having Ike there, which is because Ike was so Black in the sense where he, like, talked about a tradition, talked about the music of Black people. There's something that she couldn't go like the full way on. Like, she could explicitly say, like, oh wait, King, wasn't he a blah 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 blah? Instead, she had to couch it. Ike held it strong on that panel too, in terms of, no, there's a tradition that we're coming from. There's a people that we represent. There's something about the left that doesn't give a fuck about ordinary people and thinks that we're stupid. But I think that's also, it's interesting because in our debrief of April 4th and 6th and the weeks following, a lot of us have been talking about this, like the private life and the public life and how it's connected. And an example like this kind of proves what we're saying, which is Baldwin was so right when he's saying that there's a certain search of safety that can't continue. Like, if you're to build a new nation, there's not a safety in the left, like the like identity politics of self, like, promotion. There's not the safety of also, like, your Jewish identity, because it's not really something that has been real. But actually, there has to be, like, you have to seek for new standards. Like, what are you? If Jewish Voice for Peace is not going to be defined by Jewishness or the left, what is it going to be defined?
Right. Yes.
Like,
Pop off.
like, what is it going to be defined by? And it's not to say I don't know everyone in Jewish boys groups, and I thought Nate was a lot better, where he was more humble, less defined by like certain, like he was ready to come here and actually listen and respond to what we were saying, and respond to King, Baldwin, the civil rights movement, and actually take that seriously. And it is a question for, like you were saying, Tony, earlier, which is that they should continue with the protest. Like, you're showing the ruling elite that we're not going to stand for this, but how far is this going to go?
Wait, actually, the Anissa thing, it was really interesting because I just remembered during the panel, she said, actually, I don't think we need a revolution of values. Like, we've already had. She did say, like, I actually think maybe we've already reached a point where most people already have rejected, like, the ruling elite ideas and, like, are ready and have made it to, like, she did say that. And I think in the context of this conversation, that definitely reveals something about, like, one, I felt like it was underestimating and trivializing what a revolution of values would really mean. But I think it's also that she overestimates how far she has gone. And
like she's a vanguard or something. That's not true.
Yeah, and because I think, and then it is tied to like this identity thing that you were saying. And even thinking about, the contrast or the dynamic between Reverend Ike and Anissa, like part of how I think he was emphasizing the tradition of Black people is to say Black people actually are a people. Like they're a socially constituted people with a historical tradition, a shared experience that has made them into something. Like those are values that come out of a historical experience. Like even this thing about the music, like that comes out of the experience of slavery, like the spirituals, the slave songs, and it's organically developed into something that Black people still identify with and know their history. Whereas I feel like for the Jewish experience or the Jewish identity,
it's fake.
There's like a really weird thing where it's like your tradition extends back like thousands and thousands of years ago to the original people.
Yeah.
But it's like,
but it does.
And then like the thing of like, okay, but then some of you converted in Europe, like your experience is actually European. You came to the United States. Have you made sense of like all of that for yourself? Like what is that tradition actually? Because I feel like it comes out of like both like this almost like ancient primordial oppression where it's like, oh, we've been oppressed like from forever to forever in the future also.
You're right.
And the Holocaust is like the most modern example of how that will never go away. And like where does love fit into that tradition? Like do you just see yourself as a victim and also as like a special victim? So just like the dynamics on that is really interesting. But I realized that like this revolution of values thing or like this thing of actually overhauling your identity is very important.
Right.
Well,
let me go.
Oh no.
And then after that, we'll
right.
go into if I've already passed one. So we'll go into
I don't have that much to say, but there's just something that I feel like what you sort of started on, or this question of what you started on, that I think became so apparent and sort of so grotesque from this behavior on the panel. But that idea that like it is like that same dynamic from like when it became so evident that in the civil rights movement, Black people were taking up the charge to, achieve a new identity for the American people. And that in many ways, I feel like going back to Baldwin and this idea of like, what we're doing is really being able to mirror society, reflect back something that, just being able to, to be able to like demand something of people. Like there's something about that like Jews, especially because Zionism, like they couldn't take that. They couldn't take looking that like into that kind of mirror. And so that like turn towards Zionism and like there's that same dynamic just appeared on the panel in which I feel like we were going so strong and we were trying to reflect back this very essential demand for this time to be able to pay our dues, to be able to say what is the American people in the face of war, in the face of poverty, in the face of like a new world, and also this like grotesque old world trying to cling on. And then like all of that, I feel like when Anissa said like, I don't understand the purpose that like the line was confusing. I think it's very much like it's very much like you could say like she didn't want to, it's also that very same like recoiling away from that. So I just think it was really important that what we did was very clarifying in that moment. And I do think it was made very evident through Ike's example. Like I think that was like the mirror to which I feel like the spirit of what we were doing and how Anissa behaved and the defensiveness and like all of that. I think I really want us to, I want to better like think about what happened that day, but in the sense that like I think what we had done was, and we could still, you know, like this is what the purpose of the Year of Baldwin is, like how do you better like articulate this, reflect this, translate this, but also hold this up to people and to say, this is like, you have to be able to look at yourself and ask who you are, like who you're going to be. And it's something that we're asking of ourselves, but that's something I think we're still in the process, of course, refining and working out, but that's something that I do think will be the very big, objective of what we're doing through this Year of Baldwin. But you were going to say something.
Well, no, it's not important. It's not important because I think we should do comments and then talk about Tagore.
Okay.
Yes, when we say about the revolution of values, I think that's very important. It brought to mind, I was thinking about the movie Something the Story Carmichael said. It's very hard for the oppressor to condemn himself. And you need that in order to have a revolutionary of values. You need to reflect. And that's very important because you guys are all pointing out our refusal to condemn ourselves, and to look at ourselves. And then a person must do that, but it's difficult for a man to do that.
Okay, Emily.
No comments. Okay.
Oh, comments. I'm sorry.
Before we transition. Okay, so Chris, Todd, Fired Play, Tom, BK, somebody new named Bambalai 7. Say good morning. Okay. Todd says, when I was in college, we marched against apartheid in South Africa and Israel. Fired Play says, I read Baldwin's essay, Equal in Paris this week. It reminded me of some of my experiences in jail. Hit me in the gut. Tom said, loving the tone here. And Bambalai agreed. Great discussion indeed. Tom says, yeah, these Israeli settlers making plans for Gaza. Maybe it would be easier for the Zionists if they wrote their very own Bible like the Mormons did. Okay, I'm not going to read all of these, but Bumbalai 7 says, I read that less than 3% of the Jewish population in Israel have Semitic genes. Philip Blair is bringing up Nina Simone's song, Mississippi Goddamn, and says, I keep thinking Israel Goddamn when I see and read about the horrors in Gaza, West Bank, Israel, and the IDF prisons. Fireplace says, I wrote an essay this week that speaks to some of what Emily's saying right now about saving children here too. Israel's a loose cannon. Philip Blair says, if Israel is serious about democracy, no Israeli would tolerate those settlers voting in Israeli elections. People would be out in the streets demanding an end to that if they cared about democracy. Israeli professor Nurit Haled Alanan speaks and writes about Israeli propaganda against Israeli children and how we got here to this hate. They just resigned from their professorship. They're trying to fire her, so she resigned before they could. Okay, let's see. Philip Blair says, Hannah Arendt is the first case I know of with Zionist organizations labeling a Jewish intellectual as, quote, a self-hating Jew. Hajo G. Meyer was my favorite European anti-Zionist Jewish organizer. He talked about reading Reformation too. His book is called The End of Judaism, Ethical Tradition Betrayed. And then World Historical asks, why is there the assumption that Trump means a darn word of anything he says? Like he doesn't fall back into the fold when issues involve global capitalism and America's seat at the head of its table. But Jahan says, yes, the Thursday panel revealed the weaknesses of the Palestine Solidarity Movement, especially the role of NGO gatekeepers who are hostile to the masses. King and Baldwin are essential for building a broad peace movement that is organic to the people. And the gatekeepers are fast becoming obsolete due to their refusal to confront white supremacist contradictions. For us to take a strong stand at the conference is a very important intervention in this emerging movement. If it is based on Audre Lorde, it will all go down the drain.
That's right.
Megna says identity politics strips people of their humility, intellectual curiosity, and humanity. That was so clear on Thursday. And then I can see this being the state's method of attacking the broader Palestine movement, attacking its male leadership, family values, etc., using people like her.
But yeah, now I think let's spend the rest of the time talking about the Tagore event that just happened in India. And I think Herbert is going to report on it. Okay, so this was the first of a series of events planned for this entire year by our colleagues Nandita and Raju who are in India right now, celebrating the 100th anniversary of Tagore's historical trip to China. And this particular event was also coincidentally on April 13th. And it was the opening of a 10-day exhibition of historic photographs from that trip, but also photographs that show, the relationship that Indian statesmen, but also on the level of the people, they've had with the Chinese people. And I just want to say that I think it was brilliantly curated and the response to it was very moving. And I'll begin by reading a report that Raju wrote for, just for us to sit to hear. This year is the 100th anniversary of Rabindranath Tagore's visit to China in 1924. The reason we are marking this occasion in India with Gandhi Global Family, a sister organization of the Saturday Free School, is to bring alive the memory of the shared connection between India and China in their struggle against imperialist domination. We are planning a year-long series of events for this purpose in many cities in India, starting with Bangalore. Rabindranath Tagore's ideas continue to find resonance in both India and China. In India, Tagore is our national poet who wrote our national anthem and wrote in his most famous work, Gitanjali, quote, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where words come out from the depths of truth, where the mind is led forward by thee, into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my father led my country awake. End quote. However, Tagore is perhaps equally loved in China, where his poetry is taught in textbooks. Tagore has had a huge influence on modern Chinese literature. Chinese poets like Bing Xin, Xu Zhimo, and Guo Moruo, who was president of the Chinese Academy of Sciences till his death, were deeply influenced by him. He continues to be the most translated foreign author in China after Shakespeare. Tagore is thus truly a representative of Asia. In organizing this event, we have received an overwhelming response. Many people have expressed their support, including school teachers, artists, and Gandhian and religious organizations. Our first event, titled Rabindranath Tagore, The Spirit of Asia and Our Human Future, was held on April 13th and was the inauguration of a photo exhibition of Tagore's trip to China, as well as other connections, including the great Tan Yunshan, a Chinese man who became part of the Indian freedom struggle on Tagore's invitation. The exhibition had 62 photographs and art prints. The Chinese Consul General from Mumbai and ex-ambassador Lata Reddy addressed the event and both spoke positively about the need for peace between India and China based on a civilizational bond. The Consul General also spoke about the progress made by the two nations in the last 100 years and that both nations should be proud of it. He stressed that Tagore was a hero for all of Asia and quoted his favorite lines from Tagore. The event was done in partnership with the Indian Institute of World Culture, an institution formed close to 80 years ago that is linked to the Theosophical Society. When Martin Luther King visited India in 1959, he had lectured in the very same building that our event was held in. Through this year, we want to bring the people of India and China closer together so they may understand each other and work peacefully for our human future. In speaking of peace in Asia, we remember that Palestine and Iran are part of Asia.
Yeah.
We have found that many people continue to be influenced by the propaganda of the American news outlets, and several intellectuals and people from the Indian quote unquote left have discouraged any efforts of peace. We also found in our conversation with our Chinese guests over dinner that they also do not fully understand the nature of the American situation. We therefore are also working to politically educate the people on the true nature of the crisis in the United States and the strong feeling among the American people for peace. Therefore, this year we will also join the Saturday Free School in paying tribute to James Baldwin on the 2nd. I know I speak for, I'll just briefly also give my reflections from, I know I speak for a lot of people when I say we wish we could have witnessed it. But there's a recording that's available of, the discussion, the opening of the exhibition and all the panelists who spoke, which I would really recommend. It was very moving for me to watch. And especially the consul general, he traveled all the way from Mumbai in a train for 22 hours just for this event.
22-hour trip.
Train, yeah.
Train.
He took the train, And I have to say, I was deeply impressed and moved by the man. He just spoke with the kind of humility, but also authority, personal authority, that captures your attention, And one of the things that I really appreciated that he said, and Raju mentioned it in his report, he said that when Tagore came to China 100 years ago, you could see that there was this deep-rooted, commonly shared empathy between the Indian and Chinese people. And since then, through profound changes, through profound struggle, we have reached, the Indian people and the Chinese people, we've reached a place where we have healthy economic growth, we have social stability. So we have a lot to be proud of. And he said, if Tagore, all these people that, the exhibition highlighted, if they could see this today, they'd be so proud, they'd be so happy because this is what they were working for. But then he posed the question, is the empathy that existed 100 years back when conditions were so hard, when the future was so uncertain, does that still exist today? And then he answered his own question. He said, yes, it does. Yes, it does. I understand that there are difficulties and there are contradictions that we have to work.
Consul General.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there are difficulties that we have to work through. But as he quoted President Xi Jinping, and he said, the Indian future or the Indian dream and the Chinese dream are not far from one another. They are very close and they're mutually compatible. And if we can come together at the level of ideas, at the level of the ordinary people, we can really build a community that has a shared vision for the future for all humanity. It was just really moving. And, the ambassador, Lata Reddy, who spoke, was also a very impressive woman. I mean, she was the first Indian consul general in South Africa, and so she said that whenever I'm invited to speak or participate in anything that has any connection to Gandhi, to his legacy, I feel like it's a personal honor for me to do that. And I won't go into too much detail, check out the video and whatever. But it was in general, you could see that there was unanimous agreement that this is an important task for us right now, which all of us are responsible to. It's not just at the level of the governments, it's at the level of ordinary people, And I also I want to comment on the title that they chose, The Spirit of Asia and Our Human Future, which I think is a very powerful thing because I don't think people are accustomed to even thinking or believing that there is something as the spirit of Asia, The way Asia is viewed in the West is in this sort of shallow idea of, spirituality or, culture and this and that. But these words mean nothing unless you can actually use that history and that civilizational wealth. And I think Tagore symbolizes that because what he represents, the reason why he's so loved by the Chinese people also, he represents that creative synthesis of culture and civilization with the democratic struggle for peace, with the democratic struggle for a new modernity, which has, which has a place for dark humanity.
Yeah.
It's centered, in fact, has a high place of honor for the darker peoples, this conception of modernity. And the Chinese people also, the Consul General mentioned this, but I also think they especially love and respect a figure like Tagore because of how he criticized, say, the Japanese for what their invasion of China and all of that. And at that point in history, there weren't so many public intellectuals who were doing that. So it felt like a breath of fresh air to watch that conversation because this history needs to be alive and right now. And the fact that this was done at the same place where they also did this event on Martin Luther King 2 years back, it seems like the coming together, the fulfillment of a promise that's really required today. Because I do believe that among the intellectuals in India, there is deep confusion, and this confusion gets translated to the ordinary people also. And I think what these events, the event on King and then this event on Tagore, the reception of these events, what it's clarifying is that there is a historical basis of how India has associated with the rest of Afro-Asia. And there's also a historical basis to how it has associated with the West, the positions that they have taken. We need to clarify that once again for this time in order to move forward. So those were just some of my thoughts about, and they have many other events coming up. The next one is next week. But also, in China, since these conversations started, since they started talking to people, inviting them to participate in this, so many things have been done in China to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Tagore's visit. And this is really being taken up. And I don't know fully of what all it means, like the broad scope of it, but it's really something to behold.
Can I ask you a question? Is there a Chinese literary figure that is revered in India the way Tagore is in China?
Not that I know of. And I think I would
because I think the weak side of the relationship is the Indian government. And I know, as you point out, this kind of public intellectuals that have retreated from the freedom movement. So I was just wondering.
No, definitely. I don't think, and this is like from more informal conversations that Rabindranath told me that they had with the Chinese delegate. I mean, they're seriously thinking about how society needs to be restructured for the modern world. How China, they had such a deep conversation about religion and philosophy and God, how it's seen in Chinese society, how it's seen by the party and the state and the ordinary people, the effect of Confucianism, the synthesis of, or almost like a synthesis or bringing together of Buddhism into the broader Confucian, with I don't even know I don't have the words to speak about it. But such a deep and open conversation about, okay, what is going to happen to the people, And I mean, this Consul General, I'm adding details now, but he even said that, he came from a poor family. But what he sees the Chinese state as doing, as holding that strong social contract with the Chinese people, which is not, by the way, based on this idea that there won't be wealth inequality. Yeah, I mean, fine, Chinese billionaires, whatever. But every Chinese person, every Chinese family should have the opportunity to a future and to human dignity. This is the contract, The contract is not like all across the board, everybody will have the same status and wealth. And they're clear and they're thinking about it. And India has a lot to learn. But like Raju is also pointing out, I think in general, both sides, I think there is something to learn about the West and the relationship with the West. And it's only possible through conversations like this, through dialogue like this.
Well, I thought that was an interesting question to ask because I actually feel like, I guess more personally, I feel really personal about Tagore because I think there's like I've always felt that the long history between India and China is very emotional for me. Like as like I'm American, but it is like we all I mean why Xi Jinping is like Happy New Year to every Chinese in the world because we do share no matter where we are, like we belong to a long line of Chinese people that doesn't go away, and like there's something really important in that. And Tagore is like, so India China I've always felt to be a really beautiful relationship because like China was given like a lot of gifts, spiritual gifts from India, and it's something that I think the Chinese are conscious that they owe it to India. And the reason why I feel really emotional about it is because I don't know why. Like actually because I just think there's something really important about like let's say the Chinese clearly feel like they owe not just Tagore something, but because of Tagore they feel like we owe India something, and we would like you to feel that love. Because I actually think there's something important in reverse, where it's like when I was watching the video, like I felt really emotional because you just feel like especially for me, like there's this deep feeling where I want to be there in that room and just tell all these Indian people like I know there's multi-religions, multi-states, like different languages, but I just want you to know that like I love you. And because I think there's something very special about people of different civilizations, like because of the history, like there's something very deep to say like I learned to love myself because like the Indians in my life, for example, loved me before I loved myself. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I think when I first met Raju at Cornell, for example, like actually my parents had not even taught me to love me being Chinese. It was Raju who was most interested in like, oh, tell me about like your parents, tell me about China. And I think there's something really, it's a kind of the way that you like also probe people. You're like, oh, you're Vietnamese? Like, have you ever heard of Ho Chi Minh? There's something very important where like, when you don't love yourself, but it takes someone, it takes a people, someone from a different civilization who has that strong like sense of love for your people's civilization that makes you find your way back to where you belong. You know what I mean? And because I think Tagore, like when he went to, the reason the Spirit of Asia is also very important is that when Tagore visited China, it was also a time where the Chinese, like there's a lot of great changes in Chinese civilization, culture, politically, culturally, and what he represented was he represented that like we in Asia like do not forget there's something that even as you move forward in the world, do not forget that deep civilization, like don't forget that pride for this deep civilization that you have. And like that impacted all these poets and writers in China so much. Like it almost was like them saying, you, like no matter the changes, like through our art, through our writing, like you gave us the gift of Asia back to us. Like, and we don't take that for granted today. And because like, Bing Shin, like Guo Moreau, who's also was really good friends with Du Bois, like all of them, Yang Qichao, like they were all like huge figures in Chinese literature, modern literature in particular, where they like, it's like saying thank you for keeping that kernel of Asia for us. And I think that's why also it's that India-China friendship is so important. Like it's very deeply emotional because it's how you raise your children, it's how you raise your youth to hold on to something like that. And and like what else? And then also I really like how Raju said, and like do not forget that Palestine, for example, is Asian.
Right.
And because I was actually asking my grandpa, I was like, what do you think of Israel-Palestine? And he used this word, well, so my Chinese is really rudimentary, but he used the word yapo, which means oppressed. I mean, it's a category. It's like yapo is oppressed, right? Right? Where he was like, well, of course, he's looked at me like I'm stupid. He's like, of course we all support Palestine because they're yapo. Like it's a category. It's like almost it's a category, a human category for the Chinese people. It's like if you are yapo, if you are oppressed,
category.
yeah. No, because the way you use it, it's like a category. It's like a category in your mind of oppressed, like to be with oppressed. Like of course, if you are oppressed, like we're with you. But yeah, but anyways, no, Tagore, it's true. And I just want to say, like, I want to validate, like, this isn't bullshit. Like, Tagore is revered in China in the street. Like, I remember the first time I heard of Tagore was because when I had graduated from Cornell and I was really lonely in Boston. I did this. It was Roger who was like, "You got to do something with your life. You can't just wait around." Like, and so he was like, "You should do an event on Pan Asia." And so I did this event on Pan Asia, and some people came. And Tagore, you cannot talk about Pan Asia without Tagore. He's the singular figure for even China of Pan Asia. Like even in China, there's no one who's more represents, and that's why Tagore's Chinese name is a combination of India, the ancient words for China in India. It's Zhu Zhendan. I'm saying that totally butchering it. But Zhu is the historical term, is the Chinese name for ancient India. And then Zhendan is the Indian name for China. And so it's just Tagore's Chinese name literally combines those two civilizations in one. And yet when Tagore went to China, he said, it shocked the Chinese, like the whole Spirit of Asia thing. It shocked Tagore. It shocked people because Tagore said, for some reason, coming to China, it feels like I've come home. And for someone to say something like that, to say like, if I don't know why, but it feels like I've come home. And it says something to also the Chinese who like are going through a time where they're like, should we look up to the West? And instead, Tagore gave them the lifeline of saying, no, because like, it feels like I've come home. It feels like there's something so deep in here that, like, I hope you never lose because, it's that thing of like, you gave me this. And I feel like that's also why I was emotional seeing that Chinese ambassador in there because he was basically saying like, thank you. I just want to say thank you. And in a time where Indians may want to look West, you should know that you've given us so much. Right. And so everything that we're achieving, you've always been part of that whole journey. And so I hope that you don't forget that. But anyway, so when I was in Beijing, I was like, in Beijing, in China, every like small thing in China becomes a museum. And it's all free. So you can just walk down the street and it's like, oh, it was this person's house. So like I was walking on the streets getting breakfast with my dad. And we ran into like, there's this really famous Peking opera singer named Mei Langfang. And his house was turned into he's like a great freedom fighter who's friends with. He's the one in the picture with Paul Robeson. It's him, that famous photo of him with Robeson Chinese people. Like the man there is the opera singer. And he was like a great freedom fighter in China. And I was shocked because there's 2 gifts from India in that house, kept in that house originally. And like Chinese museums like that, there's no security. So if you wanted, you could break it and steal it. Like, no, well, there's a lot of CCTV, so you can't. But there was a fan by Bose. It must have been none. Yeah, there's a poem given to that opera singer by Bose, and then there's also a poem written by Tagore for that opera singer that was still housed there. And it just talks about those connections where in China it's remembered, where it's like we will never. And I've always felt instinctively for some reason something that the ambassador said, which is like he made a point to say, I've always felt that India and China are relatives, like we're family, relatives. And I think there's something just really deep or important because those are those ancient values. Like when Baldwin talks about ancient values in a modern world, it's that human thing, those ancient values that are gifted to us generation after generation that we hope it does not get lost in a time where the West is best and it's destroyed that basic human category of the human being and civilization. And and also I feel, obviously I feel personal because again, like I feel like when my parents didn't even teach me to love China, it makes a huge difference to meet someone who is in some ways loves you because of, so it makes a difference that someone loves you, not just because like you're a charming person, like you were born cute or whatever, but that when someone loves you because of your civilization. Like I just think there's a depth to that. And so it's why like I feel like many of us feel, for example, because of the love we felt for like Nandita and Raju and each other, where it's like I will always love India. And the way Tagore says, I think I was Chinese in my past life, like he said that. Like it's how I feel. It's like I must have been Indian in my past life somewhere, and yeah, so there's a lot of depth of emotion. It's such a significant event, and yeah, you feel like Nandita and Raju. This event is not just for India, but they're doing it for China too. And I also hope, and they're doing it for us. And I hope China also, because I do think China hopefully knows that China knows. I felt like the guy was saying it, but China needs India in the future. Like we need our brother. Like we need that's because we will like one day, similar to how you may need us, we will need you, like for that spirit, the way we've always needed you this whole time. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one last thing to all of this.
Speak up.
Yeah, it's not directly related to this event, but just something like this, the coming together of people for a cause like this, it makes me really want to make like an impassioned plea to all, the Indians and all the people who come, say, from Asia to this country and are considering the possibility of choosing whiteness over this wealth of history and civilization. I mean, I don't think people are able to make that decision with the full knowledge of what you would lose if you really gave that up, because I don't know, if you reject that, what can you really hold dear, It breaks my heart. Yeah. To watch people not be able to do that. I just wanted to say that. It's a lot to lose. People should be more aware of how much you lose when you give this up. Right. And decide that, oh no, I'm just going to be safe and I'm going to prioritize, comfort and whatever sense of happiness I have, like whatever my conception of happiness in life is, I'm going to prioritize that and forget about this history, forget about this struggle that produced me. But you don't know what you give up when you make that choice to give that up. It's a lot. You probably lose the best part of yourself.
And it shows you're not worthy of it. And this is a big part, and I hear what you and Emily are saying. And this is so important, I think, to what we are. Are we worthy of all these freedom struggles? And, so.
I was going to say, we could watch the video or we could keep talking and you guys can watch the video later.
Go ahead.
What you guys said here really clarified a lot of the previous part of this discussion, where you have Tagore and the Indian people. You were able to build civilization. You were able to build a beautiful people, and that came from struggle. Some of it, of course, was struggling against nature to eat it, but the height of it was this human struggle, and that is supposed to that can only bring you closer to other people. That fulfillment of yourself as a people can only bring you in brotherhood with other people. It can only, as the master said, build your empathy. And what that really clarifies for me is what has happened in America with Black people that have suffered, and instead of seeing even a white person that is struggling in the system, you say, man, even though you might hate me right now, I gotta love you, not in a sense of love, way, but in a way. And you're struggling, and you're suffering too, and we have something that brings us together. And I don't see that so developed in what we have seen with Jewish Voices for Peace and I guess the current conception of the Jewish identity, of that struggle that has brought you that level of empathy and brotherhood. If that were the case, I mean, for example, that woman here in Philadelphia, that would mean something to you, what's going on in the rest of the city, to see Black people suffering, and you wouldn't be able to to make underhanded attack on king.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If that struggle and conception of self really built that empathy, because it's a true struggle to build with people. And yeah, in this country, we have the benefit and the tradition to follow of Black Americans and to fulfill and become a people that can bring us closer to other. And we have the whole world here for various reasons of immigration that can bring us even closer to the world. And so really we can make Tagore and China part of ourselves as well, in a way that no other place has access to. So we're very, very blessed.
Yeah, the only reason why I'm emotional is because I think like there is how much that I don't think I processed it when I first watched the video, actually. But in the nature of all of us, like, or this is just me coming, I'm just gonna say something for me. In the nature of how I see myself, like what you said in the long line, and whether it be the Chinese people, like I know I come from a long line, and they're poets. They're poets, and you know, I think like my empathy and my sympathy also comes from such a deep place that I didn't know I had. But in the same way, I have it because I came here, and I think the thing that I'm recognizing is that when, like, you can't ever really stop giving. And I think that makes me really emotional or that makes me really pleased by the fact that there's this real relationship between human beings that will never cease to exist.
Right.
And it won't ever really cease to stop if it won't stop, but it'll only stop if you stop giving. Stop giving, like there's something about being able to give. And my feelings also come from the fact that, like, I know that I could have forgotten. Like, I could have forgotten easily what any of this means to me. And I know there's many people who can forget who they are, too. And I think that is circling around in my head again. So, like, that warning, to India, warning to China, warning to Africa, like, the path that we have is still a real and actually usable, verifiable path to freedom. And we cannot forget about that. And the deep part of me that connects to everything, which is not just that I'm an American or not just that I'm Black, but that I'm the world. Like, the world is in me. And I only am able to use it because I feel like I've had to either shed parts of that. Is like, I had to gain it. I had to gain the world because I lost everything else that I didn't need. And that's just me coming from me. And I feel like I want to see a possibility of that happening to all of my friends and all of the people that I know. It's emotional because I love Raju and Nandita. We love Raju and Nandita. And I also love the possibility of actualizing a new world. And I see us being able to do that. Sorry.
Yeah. We are ready to go.
Why don't you say?
Unless people want to watch the 9-minute video. Yeah, it's 9 minutes.
Unless there's no screen and then we go into it.
But people can also watch it at home. Yeah. Well, the only thing I think I didn't say explicitly is it's also to say that I think also that Tagore going to China is also not that there's an essence or like there's a crux to it or an essence to it that's not that different than free school.
Yeah.
Where there's an essence to it of Tagore going to China that's not that different from free school.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because I also think because we come from different civilizations, it makes us the way we basically fall in love with each other. Like, I'm not talking about like romance, but I'm talking about like the way we basically all fall in love with each other through our deep friendships. It makes us better people. Yeah. And because it makes us more complete. And I think it's also the way that, and then the other thing I just want to say is that's also how I feel about, if we talk about it where, like, I think when we were planning the China conference, we said something where it's like, African Americans gave the world so much. And in a moment like today where like you see the result of basically decades of brutal attacks on the Black community, like there's always that constant dynamic where the people who've been given so much by African Americans in the world in this country, like there are times where we must give it back. Like constantly remind them, like I want you to know that you changed my life. Like, thank you for giving us king because you gave me my life, like you changed my life. And I want you to know that, like, I think you're the most beautiful people in the world. And even if you don't remember that, you should know that, like, I'll love you forever. And yeah, I think there's something about that I think is really important because that's what I think Tagore did for the Chinese. And I think it's what, like, we do for each other, but especially I feel like in some ways what we're doing, recapturing the revolutionary spirit, also to say, like, I don't take it for granted that a long line of African American people, like, you gave us everything we have today. Like, you gave me my life. And that's something I feel very committed to. Yeah. Okay, we can watch the video. Unless people don't. No? Or we could read, okay, I think we should read, comments.
Oh, wait, one thing.
People should watch the video after, that's my belief.
I just thought of something. The council general, when he was giving his presentation, there was this, like proverb that he gave in Chinese, and it was "Da dao bu gu," which means on the large road, you're not alone. Well, it just came up because I think sometimes, even in the earlier part of this discussion, we're trying to build relationships in the city of Philadelphia, but then sometimes it's like, oh fuck, never mind about that one. And then doors shut, but then others open. Doors shut, but then others open. And so sometimes, like in preschool, we're like, holy shit, where are people, and where are the ones that we can build relationships with? And so it was really beautiful actually to see like Rajanansa in India, and then for them also to find peers that shared a similar value system, vision of the world. Because those two representatives, it was just, I don't know, like just even from the video itself, they were so humble. Yeah. And they're people that represent like 3 billion of the world's population. But they were so humble, and they like looked to Rajananda too, and they're like, you are the future. Like there's a tradition to be built upon. Like you guys will carry it forward. And so I thought of what the Council General was saying too, which is that on the large road, you're not alone. Because I think sometimes in free school, it can feel so tough, like the headwinds that we face in this country and in the world. But it's so nice to see something positive.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just like looking at the video, everyone was so, and it's not just, I don't think it was just the video. Also what I'm hearing of like the dinner that they had, like that really warms my heart too, and also encourages us here too, that we are all wrapped in the same garden of destiny.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking about the scene from Dark Princess when all of the different nations are at the table. No, but I laughed like when you started talking because I also had my own flashback. So when I had first like joined free school in 2019, and it was connected to like, oh yeah, Lotus in 2019 and how Trotskyites were attacking me and stuff. Like I've had a long history with Trotskyites also. But I remember like being in English talking to Roger about it, and he said, "Don't worry, Mitch, like because like whether you know it or not, with the stand you take, like I remember he said this. He was like, there are a billion beating hearts in China with you. And I knew what he was saying, which is like the task that we've taken is a very punishing task because we're dealing with the contradictions and the crisis in our own government, in our own society. That's a very punishing task, but I felt like I was in that room with them, with that event, and that is the reward, which is the Kingian like cosmic companionship, like the empire of eternity. That's it, baby. And like I think that's what made the event so beautiful as well. Is it's timeless, and the point isn't for me to be there, but it gives me sustenance for the struggle here. Yeah, and I think the last thing I wanted to add is I think like the Consul General, I like this phrase that they use, and Xi Jinping uses it a lot too, but the one of national rejuvenation. And I think he had applied it to India as well when he was saying, oh, the Chinese dream, also India's future and national rejuvenation. I just like that word a lot because it implies the restoration of a certain vitality, which I think is the only answer to like decadence, for example. It's a different way of also how I see us formulating the new American people. Like it implies a restoration of a certain lifeblood, and like civilization is the key for that. But that's why I just love this thing of the Chinese dream. Like when they say it that way, like I can hear it. I'm like, I can see that you're saying that a certain decadence, like in China, needs to be overcome, and it will be through like the spirit of Asia, which is civilizational spirit, that will restore a certain vitality. And okay, the last thing I'll say is like I always like hearing us talk about China because my parents are from like not the mainland, but they're from Taiwan, and I do feel that it's a pretty different psyche, and what they really lack that I look up to the Chinese people in is like this ideal of essentially like national rejuvenation. Like I can live for something, I can contribute to like making a lineage, like making a civilization anew, which is the only human inheritance. But the Taiwanese people lack it, and especially the Taiwanese youth. And like yeah, it does make me very emotional because like I didn't expect to feel so tied up even with like I feel like the people on that island, the young generation, like all of my family besides my nuclear family actually is in Taiwan. And when I see my cousins, like something actually in it breaks my heart because like this generation has lost its tie to China, like to India, and they can't rejuvenate themselves. Like they can't find the wherewithal to like actually be someone, to be a force. Like yeah, they actually a lot of them live by this like common saying. They'll say this thing a lot, which in Chinese it's called 吃到饱, but I basically think they're approaching spiritual death, but it means I live to just eat enough. Like it's like all I have to do is fill my own stomach and we're good. That's a good life, right? And where did they get that from? That's the white American playbook. Like yeah, it really breaks my heart. But yeah. So
Like being trapped in the colony at times.
I think really what I wanted to say was just how special it is, like the contribution that is being made.
Yeah.
Okay, one last thing. The idea of the human future. The fact that it's a human future.
Right.
It's not an economic future. It's not a great powers future. It's a human future. And this is also I wanted to say something when Alice was saying about the anti-Zionism becoming its own sort of political fashion in some ways, stripped of all meaning. That's the thing, is if you cheapen the movement against Zionism, then you're doing something that is a crime, because it's not an empty political statement that you can just choose to take up today, and then when it's not convenient for you anymore, drop and whatever, and use it to leverage your own status as an activist or whatever, because it's related to the human future. Zionism, if it has to go, but because our future has to be a human future. And I think it's a personal trigger for me to see people cheapen it by just saying, "Oh, of course, of course we are against that." No, you're not. You don't live your life that way.
Right.
Right. Anyways, that's all.
Okay, let's do last comments.
Okay, well, there are a lot of comments, but some of them are pretty hard to parse out. So someone named Namro Arun Mays just had a bunch of comments about, I guess, how they see the world situation developing, which I think is in the framework of like basically great power things, where it's like, oh, great powers are just trying to other great powers, like NATO developments in very, very brave Sweden, Finland, where I think it's the idea that Russia and China are like expansionist, and so there is no human future. There's just eternal like great power clashes.
John Mearsheimer, that's it.
I think so. Yeah. Oh, you think John Mearsheimer?
Yeah, that's his career.
Okay, but then and that basically there aren't, all of these are alliances for power. None of it is about a recognition, I guess, of human beings or the human category of civilization.
Yeah, right.
Very pessimistic.
Yeah, and so I'll just read, I guess, 3 of their comments. Okay, China has to constantly talk about these things. If there are going to be many wars now, it'll be for these reasons, because the Chinese dream is to follow an expansionist policy, like the Asian Emperor Genghis Khan. They want to avenge opium wars, especially for the Malacca Strait and from the British. And Buddha's Britain's colony in the Pacific, Australia. Who care? Oh, and then Todd says, these are interesting opinions that I don't agree with any of them. And I don't agree with any of them. But again, what relevance do these opinions have to the discussion? Their response was, who cares if you disagree? They were talking about China, and that's why the Chinese Communist government is a government that likes to expand, and a deep state that is waiting for the time for revenge. But that was like, so, there was some discourse in the comments, but someone named Kay Reed said, so uplifting to listen to such intelligent, creative young people.
Yeah.
Much thanks to all of you for your heartfelt comments. And I think they know Todd. And so Todd said, so great to see you here today. Okay, and then just now, a comment from someone named Flomo. This is great freedom language, rejuvenating lifeblood, be a force, a human feature. It breathes life into an exhausted, beautiful struggle. I think that.
Nice comment.
Yeah, that's a beautiful discussion.
Thanks, everyone.